Hey, hey, look at we got Pikachu's butthole. We got some kind of dude who looks like a predator, but with a bird predator.
I'm Jake the dog, not human Jake. I'm Jake the dog, and also I lost one of my eyes.
See, that's what makes it look like Pikachu's butt. I was like, is that a hat on the side?
Oh, that's an eyeball. I thought it was a hat.
No, there's an eyeball. It's supposed to have two eyeballs. But yeah, I'm Jake. I'm wearing my Jake suit. Jake is Jake. I made this years ago for Halloween, and like I went out to a club wearing it, and I was wearing like a yellow morph suit as well. So I was like fully. Yeah, I made this. That's why it's so shit.
I'm Bugs Bunny. What's up, Doc?
But it was like full of pins that I used to pin together like the foam, because it's like foam with yellow spandex over the top. And lately, like I dug it out again. And I'm like finding pins still in it that held it together. And I'm like, fucking hell, this is dangerous. I went out to a fucking club and danced amongst other people with like pins in it. Like, what the fuck?
Speaking of Halloween, that's very Halloween-esque. That's how Pinhead, that's his original origin story. He dressed up as Pikachu's butthole, went to a rave, got slammed, and all the pins went into his head. Yeah.
Oh, man. That's like one of my primal fears is getting a needle in the eye as well. Like I loved cross stitch as a kid, but I know every time the needle came towards my eye, whenever I was like, oh, the tension. Oh, every time.
Nice. Hey, people are coming in 22 already. Thanks for being here, everyone. Greenie is in Taiwan, so she won't be here. I sent the link to Crystal. I don't know if she'll make it or not.
Yeah, she said that Irene said that China actually shut down Taiwan's internet, so she won't be able to join us today.
Shitty,
and there's actually no guarantee if she'll ever make it back.
Right. Yeah.
Oh no.
Yeah.
Shotguns at the ready.
And what else we're doing? This is a third Halloween thing, but my topic isn't super Halloweeny. Here, I'll throw it up.
No, just pretend it's Halloweeny. Just pretend it's Halloweeny. Give it the feeling of Halloweeny.
Not Halloweeny at all.
Yeah, you could find some Halloweeny in this. There's some things about short stories. Short stories are very, very Halloweeny.
I mean,
like
I would
ghost stories.
Halloween stories are usually short stories.
Yeah. Is there such thing as a long Halloween story? I don't know.
Like an epic.
The long Halloween, isn't that a thing?
Oh yeah, Batman, The Long Halloween is a long story that involves Halloween. There you go.
Oh,
nice.
Hey, you know what? Especially for this show, I've been tidying up my place. People have noticed that like my desk is like all set up and for drawing now. But it also meant I fixed the fucking smoke machine's positioning. Oh, is it not working? No! Why is the smoke machine working?
Why can't
Oh, there we go. Wait a minute. Look, I fixed the positioning so it...
Jake the dog just farted. Look at that.
Pikachu's butthole is farting. Pika-pee. I mean Pika-poo. I mean Pika whatever. Pika-pot. Sorry.
You're gonna solve a mystery of what happened to Pikachu's shit. Because you're Detective Pikachu's butthole.
Detective Pikachu's butthole. You know what's fucking weird? Every time I press this button, like this is the fucking fog button, right? My computer plays the sound where a device detaches and reattaches.
Oh.
Yeah, and it's like it's not connected to the computer. It's like, what is happening? Is it sending out some kind of fucking seismic EMP wave?
It's those electronic ghosts.
Yeah, that sound is funny. It's like,
oh, is it good or bad now? Is it louder than it was before? Is it?
It's not bad. Yeah, it's palatable.
Yes, good.
Very palatable.
It's a palatable sound. Good. I'm glad my sounds are palatable. Oh
yeah. Caleb says you got to shorten a USB, bro. Probably a bad cable. Caleb is the cable guy. Caleb the
cable guy.
Cable guy.
Caleb is an anagram for cable. Do you guys know that?
Yeah.
Wow, that's true. But Caleb.
It's also an anagram for Belka.
Nice. Whatever that means.
Whatever that is. Isn't that some kind of company that makes like routers? I think, you know what? It must be when the smoke hits something.
Yeah. Alex BRB says the long and short of it. I thought about writing that and I was like, I feel like that's a cliche and I don't know what it means, so I'm not going to use it. But I think maybe we can talk about that for a second. Do you guys know what that means? What does the long and short of it mean? Why is it a saying?
Well, I know that Raiden Radio made his book called New Harlem, The Long and Short of It.
Yeah.
Isn't it another way of saying TLDR?
Yeah. Is
You know
that kind of what it means?
The phrase TLDR, because it takes longer to say than here's the breakdown.
TLDR, here's the breakdown. It's the same amount of syllables, so I guess it's pretty even keel.
Retarded, and people over 50 don't know what the hell you're talking about.
Yeah, and then to translate it in your head, you have to go like the long and short of it. No.
But
what's it stand for again?
No, too long didn't read.
Yeah, too long didn't read doesn't make sense.
Well, look, maybe you should have called it growers and showers.
Yeah. See, the long and short of it. Yeah, it's like it's like twins with you got your Danny DeVito and you got your Arnold Schwarzenegger standing right next to each other. The long and short of it. That's the twins. Is that what it means? It means genetically not identical twins standing right next to it. That's the long and short of it. Basically, Danny DeVito versus Arnold Schwarzenegger. That's the long and short of it. TLDR.
They should have made a crime thing with Danny DeVito called the short arm of the law.
Yeah, does the law normally have a long arm?
Apparently.
Yeah, that's a trope cliche. All right, so Merriam-Webster says that the long and short of it is used when making a statement that is brief and that tells someone only the most important parts of something.
So it is like TLDR. But what about its origins? Like, why is it saying the long and short of it? Is it about sticks? It's like two kids holding sticks one day. One had a long one, one had a short one.
I don't know. Doesn't say.
And the one with the long one was the victor, and he buried the short one under the house.
Yeah.
Very short, scary story for Halloween.
Yeah. So I don't even know. All right. Well, let's kind of get into it. That there's 10 slides, I think. So the
Hell
first
yeah,
one,
10 slides.
Yeah, I'm excited about this. Now, this is interesting. Excuse me. You wrote in your own handwriting this, huh?
Yeah, I scrawled it.
Like
and this quote from Flannery O'Connor might as well be from Napoleon, but I actually put this quote on the back of the B-sides when I published my short story collection. The B-sides. See if I can make it bigger.
Oh no, my headphone wire is going to stop me from.
So there's the quote. So many people now write competent stories that the short story is in danger of dying of competence, which is part of my little thesis statement here or whatever is that short stories are they're great for exploring and experimentation, breaking rules rather than making rules or whatever, or just doing anything. And one kind of way so this quote's kind of cool, I think. I don't know. Do you guys have any initial thoughts on this quote? And I'll move on. This is nothing crazy here,
but yeah, sure. I mean, well, when I was taking creative writing classes, I actually took a short story writing class, and a lot of like the first part of that class was about, I mean, how much time actually. Seemingly, people say that more time goes into writing a short story than a long story because everything needs to be in place and has to be very sufficient. And there are authors in literature that only write short stories, right? And that's how they hit it big, stuff like that. So, I mean, I could see where this quote is coming from, though.
Is he saying you have to be incompetent to write short stories?
Sort of. Like it's
you
saying
have to be a fucking idiot.
She's saying it's all inclusive too, and that if we have too many like pros are the only ones doing it, they're all going to be the same and they're all boring. And she likes like the so bad it's good, for lack of a better term or something. Like she likes the amateur short stories can still be just as interesting because they don't have to be like as well structured as like a longer story or whatever.
Yeah, if you're gonna read a bad story to get something fresh and new, you probably want it to be a short one.
Yep. Yeah. Yeah, and I can kind of relate to that. Like I do like short stories, and I would almost like a kind of weird short story rather than like whatever a perfect one. The next the one we can stay here for however long. This is we could come back to this too. I'm a little bit proud of this, I must say. I actually scribbled this like 10 years ago, but I didn't think of Shaggy Dog. But I was thinking of the main idea when I first wrote it. I was like, the more perfect things get, the more the same they get. So it's almost advantageous to not be perfect because then you won't be the same as everything else.
Well, yeah,
So you
because
can
style
imagine-
is imperfection. Your style is your imperfections. If it was perfect, then it would just be real. Do you know what I mean? It would just be nature. Like if your art was perfect, then you would just be replicating fucking real life. But all of the mistakes away from real life are what makes up your style.
Yeah, I agree with everything except for real life. But yeah, like whatever the class, like perfect could be like Shakespeare or like a modern version like Godfather or whatever, like the hero's journey or and anything like you can do like Star Wars is like perfect. So you can make a perfect sci-fi. It could be end up being a lot like Star Wars because Star Wars already did all like that perfect stuff. The more close you get to like well trained classical great stuff, it gets more narrow and narrow, and you get more freedom as you get away. And I'm like, what are the vectors that you could get away? So if you're experimenting in here, some of this could be like the so bad it's good, some of the accidentally good stuff almost, or I said advantageous ignorance. We see a lot of examples of that actually, where people come into a new scene, like even if it's comics or it could be like movies or animation or whatever. Someone comes in that is totally untrained. They're not familiar with the tropes and the styles of contemporary what's going on with the cool kids up here, and they end up making some really weird shit. That shit can be like the kind of stuff that kind of stands the test of time more almost, or it can kind of shape the new idea of whatever's classical. Jake or Phil, were you gonna say something?
No.
Okay, well, so then real quickly just about these two like whatever. So if you get away from classical, or this could be, you could call it like you could call it modern. If this is postmodern, this is modern. That's kind of the spectrum. Like whatever the regular classic good shit is, and we all kind of know a little bit what postmodern is. And there's pros and cons to it. You can think of bad examples, like a lot of shitty new SJW Marvel and stuff is actually postmodern in certain ways, or like Ryan Johnson with Star Wars. Yeah, like it's a little postmodern when he tries to like go against your expectations, that kind of stuff. So there can be really negative examples. There can also be like amazing examples. Crystal, what's up? How's it going?
Hey, pretty good.
Are you just getting here? Should we catch you up real fast, or do you...
Yeah, go ahead.
Yes. So this is just the triangle of like the idea that as you get closer to the tip top, things can tend to be more the same, homogenous. Like, but even though the quality can go up, these are like skilled, trained people, and you can break away with like amateurs, like some of the so bad it's good, some of the experimentation. So this is about short stories and long stories, and short stories are great for some of this experimentation.
Wait a second, I just noticed Jake.
Yeah.
Dude.
He's Pikachu's butthole.
I'm dressed as Jake.
How can you breathe?
Because I've got a Pikachu's butthole to breathe out of.
He's got a smoke machine. He goes straight to the dome.
I can choke to death on the smoke machine. Hold on. There we go.
Okay, let's watch.
Yeah.
Oh, wow, dude. I almost thought you looked like one character from Adventure Time, the dog. What's his name?
That's
like
what I am.
Jake? Yeah.
Yes.
Dude,
yes.
okay, so that's what I thought. You said Pikachu. You said Pikachu.
Oh, no.
So I was like, wait a minute. That looks like Adventure.
He had two eyes, but one of them fell off.
Oh, no.
So I got one eye. But yeah, you mentioned Adventure Time on your stream today. I was like, oh, shit. Yes. I got my Jake the dog costume. I should wear that today.
Awesome.
Mm-hmm.
Like, did you just have that, like, hiding in your
made
closet?
This myself. I made this years ago for Halloween. And
that's great.
I was thinking of throwing it away this week.
Oh, no.
Literally, I was going to throw it away tomorrow. Like, tomorrow. And I'm like, nah, maybe I should at least...
Just wear it. Just one-eyed, like, dead and dying Jake. He's, like, lost an eye. He's, like, put him out of his misery.
Meatbag? I'm gonna steal your wallet, meatbag. That's the wrong character.
That's not too bad, I guess, as a Jake. It's kind of okay.
just do Bender. Yo, what up, meatbag?
Nice.
I'm gonna fuck Lucy Lou, meatbag.
So, Crystal, we started with this quote from Flannery O'Connor. So many people can now write competent stories that the short story is in danger of dying of competence. And that's like a little bit of this idea. It gets homogenous if you get too skilled. Everyone's doing the same stuff. It's all good, but nothing's like weird. To do the weird stuff, this is like sometimes it's so bad it's good, accidentally good, the advantageous ignorance. I don't know. Do you have any thoughts? And then I'll continue. But any thoughts on this?
No, sounds pretty straightforward.
Yeah,
so far.
The more you venture away from those points and away from the formula, that's when you get things that stand out, right? Because really, what you're saying is like if you are telling stories or really doing anything by a formula, it has so many other examples that have been created that way that you could get stuck in to being similar to other things and kind of passed over because of that.
Do you have any good examples of the middle? Just to throw out?
Yeah, we can think about it with like after the fact, but I think the middle it's sort of like a mix of these three things because there's classical postmodern is kind of self-evident and it makes sense. So bad it's good is like something I know you see it once in a while and you're like kind of glad it exists or glad you stumbled across it, and that's its own kind of weird cool thing. But I only recently kind of got into the Shaggy Dog thing, and I'm like, this is a form of postmodern, but it's totally different in its own thing, and it's kind of a spectrum too. And one of the main things kind of what Shaggy Dog is it means you're allowed, it's like you were saying with real life, Jake, you're allowed to show more. You don't have to have a point per se. Like you're allowed to like show whatever the hell you want. And one of the fun things about that is it makes things super unpredictable because it like setups and payoffs are out the window. Like you're just showing shit and nobody knows anything of what's happening. All you can do is watch and kind of see what happens, which that kind of seems awesome. But then on the flip side, you're losing some of this stuff, and these stories can be boring if they do them wrong or
Yeah, what is that? I've never heard the term before, but is that like an Eraserhead thing?
Yeah, what's the original term of what the Shaggy Dog thing comes from? But I can give like hundreds of examples. But like Norm Macdonald's famous for telling Shaggy Dog jokes, and that's where the joke itself is like 10 minutes long, and it has the dumbest teeny little punchline ever. And that's kind of the joke. But the 10 minutes that the fact you kind of end up laughing like, oh my God, you just wasted 10 minutes of my time. That's hilarious. Like you kind of like
can't get that time back.
Yeah. The ultimate Shaggy Dog movie, or there's a handful, but there's one, and your boy Zach was talking about it a few years ago, and he was also talking about Shaggy Dog stuff. And I hadn't seen it at the time, but now I know exactly what he's talking about. But it's called The Long Goodbye. And it's a detective story based, it's like a Philip Marlowe story, like that guy. So it's that writer, I forget who, but that famous detective, private detective, he goes on a story. So the plot though, to give you an example, it's like one of his best friends says he needs help driving to the border to Mexico. So he drives him, but he doesn't ask any questions. The next day, the cops come to him because they're like, your friend's a murderer, and they end up arresting him because he helped him go to the border, but he doesn't know, and he's like, my friend is not that type, like he wouldn't kill anyone. And then they end up letting him go because they're like, well, your friend was found dead, or your friend committed suicide in Mexico, so case closed, you're free to go. And then so he goes, my friend did not commit suicide, I just guarantee it. So that's your sort of point of the movie. But then what happens is he gets another job, and like an hour of the movie is him doing this other job. It has nothing to do with the point of the story. And so you would almost get like annoyed, but the fact that it's doing it on purpose, you kind of get down. You're like, all right, like what the hell are they doing? And they're kind of building this tapestry of his life. And yeah, like it'll come up a little bit. Like he might talk about the guy to a woman who sort of knew someone who knew him. It just comes up for like 1 second while they're talking. But meanwhile, he's doing this completely unrelated thing. And then at the end, they might ever so slightly tie together, and then they do kind of wrap it up. And it's a cool kind of movie, but it's that freedom. Some of this postmodern and Shaggy Dog especially could be a little bit like described as giving yourself freedom to like break rules, step away from what.
Yeah, I
what's
want to watch
expected.
more Shaggy Dog stuff. Would you think Freddy Got Fingered would be a Shaggy Dog comedy?
I think so. Yeah, I'm trying to remember. It's also postmodern, totally.
Well,
so
what
it's-
about, have you guys seen Dude, Where's My Car?
Yes,
Yeah.
I love that.
Yeah,
Like,
It's so
a bunch
dumb,
of
but it's
crazy
funny.
shit that happens.
yeah, yeah. I think that could definitely be considered Shaggy Dog.
Do
Yeah,
you think the Clerks films in a way of maybe that? I don't know. Maybe that's a bit tenuous.
Bill
but-
and Ted.
Yeah.
yeah. Yeah. So, and then like within this, I'm wondering like, we might have, that sort of can come up with some of what we're talking about here, but you can have like episodic storytelling, like a road trip movie. So a lot of times they'll just have like 4 different adventures in one movie, like even a little bit, and then one kind of overarching thing. But like Dumb and Dumber is almost like that, where like it's like short stories within the longer story. and you
Yeah,
kind of-
Yeah.
I was thinking Dumb and Dumber. I was like, would this work? I mean, they did literally drive a Shaggy Dog.
yeah. Oh, you know what? The ultimate Shaggy Dog movie, literally ultimate. It's the Big Lebowski. Have you guys seen that?
Oh
Dude,
yeah, okay.
everyone
So now I'm
does.
getting what it is more.
Yeah.
I think I love them. I think I
Yeah,
love Shaggy Dog's story.
they're pretty sweet. And I'm trying to think like the thing is like, yeah, like that element. If you're bored by a movie, it's a little bit too much of that. And there's probably a lot of examples of that too, but we kind of forget them or whatever. But yeah, the Big Lebowski is like hilarious because you end up watching it and then you're so entertained, but at the end you're like, what was that even about? What even happened? Like I forget the end. I'm like, did he get
Yeah.
his rug back or something? What was the point of the movie? His rug got pissed on and so much random shit. And it's really, yeah, I kind of want to rewatch that now that I think of it. It's like, obviously that's like an ultimate classic, but
I think I was
Yeah.
really inspired by that stuff as a kid. I think a lot of my early stuff that I would make, it was just like, let's put some fun stuff in here. It doesn't, like, you'd still have a conclusion and like a bit of structure, but yeah, it was just like an excuse to put loads of fun stuff together.
Yeah. So Arthur Line says, I don't like it at all. I would disagree and say that these postmodern are ideological subversion of good storytelling. So that's something too. I think postmodern is complicated enough that it can be good or bad. Like, for example, like Tarantino, all his stuff is postmodern and it's amazing. And yeah, like if he were to be like not an ideological flip of what came before, it would just be more of the same. Like his whole point is to like play off what's come before. That's kind of one little definition of postmodern, is it's reactionary to what came before. It's like aware of the greater perspective,
I
which
wonder-
again, what's that?
I was just agreeing. Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah. And that's like SJW's taking it the wrong way. They're like just reacting in a wrong way about the wrong stuff. Kind of the one definitely it's the Ryan Johnson one, the Star Wars one is kind of one of the
The
bigger
Last
examples.
Jedi.
Yeah, where it's like, damn, that was like stupid or whatever.
Yeah, it's really interesting.
Yeah,
Like,
absolutely pointless.
if you look
Yeah.
at like the westerns of like the 1950s and how grand they were, and you have like this white-hatted cowboy of justice who is unflinching in his morality, and then you go into the 60s and 70s with the spaghetti western, where there's none of that, where it's kind of like what you're saying, like the postmodern take of that, reflecting what came before it, where your hero is now an outlaw, an anti-hero that is more human, right? Is more like you, and also reflects the reality of what the West was like. Instead of like this land of opportunity and freedom, it's the bad version of freedom where there's no law, and it's really
Bad
hard to-
freedom. Oh my god, get him.
Yeah, well,
Freedom.
what humans do with it.
Alex VRB says, Jake as Jake the dog is truly Shaggy Dogception.
Yeah, of all the
bet
strings
that's
to wear
that's
dress as
gonna-
a dog.
Perfect.
Yeah.
It's perfect.
That's going to come up in the meme for
Yeah.
so guaranteed.
I wonder what would happen if Tarantino made something modern that wasn't deconstructivist. I wonder if he could make a really good classical.
Good question. I used to
think
wonder
he
that.
has it in him, dude.
Yeah, like I wanted that for a long time and I kind of gave up hope. But I was thinking it was almost like I think he almost tried with Django Unchained and he just couldn't. He still had to do his stuff because that one does have like a little bit of the fairy tale hero's journey type stuff that would be considered a little more classical or whatever. But then he obviously continues to put his crazy spin on it. But he got it a little bit out of his system there, maybe.
Yeah, he just can't help himself.
Yeah. FK says Tarantino deconstructs, but without political motivation. Yeah. It seems like maybe the political motivation is a big thing that can be a lame example of postmodern.
Well, I mean, you see successful stuff at that. Like, I would say The Boys is very much a deconstruction of like traditional superhero stuff. And I mean, a lot of things that Garth Ennis does is like that just because he hates that classic superhero tropes so much.
Yeah. And if we're in an era where everything is like this, then it's really refreshing to have something like this.
Oh, for real, yeah.
Definitely. And it ebbs and flows. Like you see that, like the subversion of the Western into the spaghetti Western totally annihilated the genre after, the mid 70s, where no one wanted to touch those because it was so saturated with those stories, just the market. We've seen that. I feel like probably in the late 90s as well in comics with like the superheroes always now being anti-heroes. And then I guess probably 2000s getting back into superheroes with the big booms in the films. And then a lot of Mark Millar's stuff is kind of a subversion of some of that too. Like you look at Nemesis and...
No, you have Big Game. I love that.
Yeah.
Yeah. I haven't read that one yet, but I want to...
You should, Narwhal. It's really picking up, man.
Yeah, I'll read it when it goes to trade.
Nemesis was definitely kind of postmodern. Actually, that's sort of a defense of it because there was a kind of big YouTube video that got a lot of views, like kind of making fun of Mark Millar and saying that Nemesis is cringy and terrible. And I commented, like, it's postmodern. It's good. Yeah. So I want to skip ahead real fast.
Whoa.
You went past the whole presentation.
I know. I want to skip to this one real fast because this sort of applies. Like I saw an interview with Steven Spielberg and they were asking him advice for storytellers and filmmakers, and he said, "Don't be boring." And so on one hand, you're like, "What the hell, Steven Spielberg? Can you please give us a real answer?" And on the second hand, though, I was kind of like, "Damn, that's kind of a cool answer," because that's more in that freedom kind of aspect of you can do anything. You can do anything you want. It's like that Flannery O'Connor quote.
Like it gets you thinking.
Yeah. Like you just don't be boring is like the one rule. And then Trey Parker says some of this kind of come up later, so just going over this, but he says less and thens versus more but or therefore when you're telling a story. So like if you're telling a story and then this happens and then this happens, and this. But this happens, therefore this happens. But this happens, therefore this happens. That's kind of when you're in one story. I think if you look at a series, like if it's a series of floppies, like this is one way to do it, and it's kind of cool. But like King Cryptid or whatever, every issue is but and therefore. But in between each issue is usually an and then.
Right. Yeah. Like your and thens would. Like imagine a road, right? This is the direction you're going on, and this happens. But and therefore would be like you're putting a speed bump in the road, or a building falls down in front of your way, and new things are popping up that your reader and you did not expect, and your story changes paths.
Yeah. And were you gonna say, and then the and thens are just when the story ends, kind of, or?
I would say, yeah. When you have that part of storytelling, there's not a lot of conflict. When you put a but in there, that's where the conflict happens.
Yeah. Like if we're talking about road trip style stories that are a little more episodic, it's like in between the little mini adventures actually might be and thens, but that'd be a rare case where an and then is kind of allowed. within like a movie or something. Yeah. Any thoughts, Jake or Crystal, on these?
Yeah, the buts are always just the conflicts coming in, right?
Mm-hmm.
This was
And then the therefore is just always the solution to overcome the conflict. And then you can't just constantly if you want like you can't just chain them constantly. You kind of like need a bit of a break. So you do need like an
spread
and
it
then
out.
every now and then. Otherwise, it's this like hard to keep in their head chain of constant obstacles and solutions. Like you need a little bit of rest of the and thens every now and then.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And so the last little quote that kind of helps for some of this stuff we're talking about is from David Lynch. And I'll just read it. I copy pasted it, so it's like kind of weirdly pasted. But he says, I met Frank Daniels at the American Film Institute, who was dean of the School Center for Advanced Film Studies. And he taught a way to do it. You get yourself a pack of 3x5 cards and you write a scene on each card. And when you have 70 scenes, you have a feature film. So on each card, you write the heading of the scene, and then the next card, the second scene, the third scene. You have 70 cards each with the name of the scene. Then you flesh out each of the cards and walk away. You've got a script.
Your impression of him is getting better and better. You need to each
Now he
time
just
you do
has
it.
to do the weather report, man.
Yeah.
I feel like that was a Shaggy Dog story right there.
Yeah. It is a little bit. The one thing that I took only one thing away from this when I first heard it, it's not as cool as like Spielberg's. We're like, oh, maybe he's being really deep. But this one, it's funny, like just recognizing that a movie, which is only like a 90-minute to 2-hour story. This is a little bit longer, but not an epic, crazy story. They have to be about 70 scenes. Scenes are kind of quick for one. They're like a little over a minute. Like you might think of scenes as longer, but usually in comics and movies, scenes are like a page or two or whatever. And thinking of 70 scenes is actually, that's a lot. That's a high number. And I've noticed that before if I'm writing like a movie script, I'm like, shit, am I even going to hit 90 pages? And I'm like, we got room for whatever, like fit some shit in. If I'm co-writing with Jared on Hotel Story, we're like, should we add this or this? Should we add this, do this? And I'm like, for now, let's just say yes, because we aren't even sure how long can we even get to 70 note cards. You know what I mean? Like,
right. And that's something too that plays into short and long stories, specifically through comic storytelling. What I've found, because I've written a lot of short comics and some long ones as well. Like I have an ash can for my Lost Pages series called The People, and it's 20 pages each ash can, which is short. It's like a floppy, like a little bit shorter than what you would buy at a comic shop, weekly or monthly. But what I learned is something that makes your story seem longer is kind of scenes and setting changes to the reader. So, and just learned that through writing those, and having probably, a handful of different settings can make something like a short comic seem like it's something longer.
Like Rainey's 2.5 of Fiendish that I'm coloring, like that's 24 pages and it covers a lot of ground. Like sometimes you'll have a scene that's just like one panel, like you'll have like 3 jumps in time and it's like 3 different panels, and it feels like it covers quite a bit that way for such a short page count.
Yeah. And like sometimes you have to get those one shots just like out of your system. And it's kind of like a nice reset to do something that's just kind of like a little bit shorter and contained every now and again when you're doing something like a long form series.
Yeah. If you picture a floppy to like 20 page, it's like how many scenes can even fit in that? It's like max 10. 10 would be kind of a lot maybe.
Sure.
But so then so say it's 10, that's kind of high. That would mean like this feature length film version, 70 scenes would be 7 issues of a comic, which is kind of a lot almost, Watchmen was 12. So,
right.
And Watchmen gets turned into like a 3 or 4 hour movie if they like include everything. So that it's some of this is like just slightly interesting of like how the lengths sort of compare. Like a lot of what if it's a 48-page comic, that's like a little bit more like either a 1 hour episode of a TV show, you know, or potentially even a half an hour episode would kind of fit into 48 pages.
This reminds me too of like the whole flashcard thing or note cards, basing your scenes on that technique. Reminds me years ago when a certain Doug TeNapel would circle around these parts. That's how he said he wrote his stories, his on note cards. He would take them like if he was on the plane or out at lunch and he had an idea, and that's how he would pace his comics out, was with note cards. I specifically remember him saying that. So it's pretty interesting.
This note card thing doesn't mean like think of 70 random scenes that you could have and then start playing puzzle pieces with them, does it? Like you still
No, I don't think it does.
Yeah.
I'm like, wait a minute.
Oh,
Just start writing a bullshit on a card, and then later on you can
Yeah.
mix them up.
Yeah, but it's interesting to even think in those terms, like however David Lynch does it, because his movies are kind of weird, so whatever he does.
But they're very in his head if you think about it too.
Yeah. Yep. Okay, so back now to these. So what did I write? This is some random shit I wrote scene versus scenario versus short story. And I don't remember what that means. Can you guys think of what that might mean?
Are you nesting them within each other? Like a short story contains scenarios, then they contain scenes?
Oh, like I think this is like a scene can be a short story, you know?
Yeah.
But they're kind of different. Like scenes are usually a small part of a greater whole. A lot of storytelling stuff is fractal, and I think it is a good skill to be able to just think of a scene and write a scene and have like conflict within that, have a climax and a resolution or whatever. And then so I think that's it's interesting that they're kind of the same but kind of different. Scene is more of a building block, but a short story could be a scene. A short story is in some ways less of a building block. A lot of times it is a little bit more on its own to make it kind of interesting. And then scenario, this is slightly different, but that if you think of that, I tend to think of it as a shorter thing rather than a longer thing. But it could be a longer thing too. In Hitchcock's day, they called writers, they called them like scenarists, and they called a script the scenario. I think they didn't even use the word script. And so they're like, you're the scenario writer. What's the scenario? And that's just way different than even thinking of it as a script. And this is for movies. Movies are like a little bit
when you
closer
think
related
of scenario, it's almost like you're thinking of branching paths almost. When I think about that, it's like we could do this or this, and then you try to figure out which one best suits your audience.
Yeah, and like what for scenario? There's scenario, there's situation, like sitcom. The situation is like often super simple, but then it's kind of sort of like a world building thing almost. Like the situation for Seinfeld is he's in an apartment with a weird neighbor and he's nemesis with another neighbor, and he's got some friends who are always visiting him. That's like all they wrote, and then they tell like 1,000 stories with that.
Yeah.
And I wonder if that can be replaced with like, what's the scenario? It's a guy and he's got a mooch apartment dude, lives next door, blah blah blah.
Yeah, I was trying to think of how to create the perfect recipe for making scenarios, and I was like, if you're gonna take, say, the story circle, the like shortened down version of the hero's journey, and each point of it you can say like place of comfort. So you just think, okay, what's the normal home of this character where they can always start and come back to? Like, is it an office they're at? Is it their house? Is it like the sewers? And then like the problem, it's like, okay, what problems can always come from this world? Is there a constant fight going on where enemies will run in? And then the crossing the threshold into the obstacle, like the world. Okay, how do I build a scenario where the characters can constantly go to new worlds all the time. And like with Rick and Morty, it's the portal gun. With Futurama, it's the Planet Express ship.
Mhm.
And then
And yeah, Turtles is kind of like that, like you're saying too, the sewers and then coming above even like.
Yeah, like you can take every point on the story circle and basically make an element of your overall scenario if you want to make an episodic IP and make something that fits into it. Like the realization, okay, you're gonna have loads of epiphanies. So are you gonna make one character that's constantly having epiphanies? Or are you gonna make one character that's constantly a catalyst for loads of different characters and they're all gonna have epiphanies? And it's like, okay, what world can constantly throw up all of these new characters? And like the rest of it's like returning home and reflecting. You don't really need to pull much from that, but like, yeah, you could take those elements and think like, where is my home? Where is the places we can go to?
Yeah, with scenario, one thing I kind of like is I don't know if it demystifies or it de-romanticizes. It feels more professional in some ways, and it feels more like they're not trying to like change the world. Like we're not here to like make the world a better place with our amazing story. It's just like, what's the scenario? Come on, like you're a guy. You got a pen, you got a typewriter. Give me a scenario. Let's go.
And even like a more simplified version of that, it's like a kid with like a dollhouse. And they have like all of these pieces and they have the sets, and then you know how kids sit down and then they come up with like all these different stories for all of these pieces, and they're playing with the same toy, but it's like every single day they have a new story.
Yeah, I love that. I kind of want to write that down. That's not in the slide, but that could be its like own slide almost. That would be where a lot of inspiration could come from. If you think of it as like playing with toys.
Yeah, I love trying to invent those. Like Hollow Fist is that. Like you have Fistopia, which is like Hollow Buddies everywhere, but you have like the island split into all these different sections, and each one is lorded over by a different professor, and like the professors have their social structure, and then the Fistas have and like a lot of the times you can think of like different groups of people instead of different characters. Like there's people who work for this company. There's like the Holofisters. There's normal people. In Futurama, it's like a whole bunch of aliens and the sewer mutants and the robots. They're like all fantasy races, but in a sci-fi setting. And then you can just think of like all these stories where all those are all the toys you're making. And then like you can make shit tons of stories that come from all those.
Yeah, a lot of that too would be your like long form storytelling. Like long stories include all of that kind of like world building stuff. Like you see that a lot in IPs like Cyberpunk and very high fantasy stuff.
That's when you're setting up the fucking longest story where you're going for like huge arcs, and then a short story would be like, here's a concept I want to prove out, and the concept is very much tied to the story itself, right? Like the world and setting is tailor-made for that one specific story, like, and it might not even be like a big expansive thing. It might be like just one character's experience of something, and a lot of it might not get described out.
Isn't there some song that goes like, what's the scenario? Do you guys know?
I've never heard of that.
Sounds familiar, but
do you like Beastie Boys?
It does sound like Beastie Boys, but I don't think it's scenario.
Yeah. Like I like playing with toys, calling it a scenario. I was thinking, you know what one would be is like the two people who hate each other get shipwrecked and have to work together all of a sudden. Like a lot of like.
There you go. Yeah.
Yeah, they're like cliches, but they're awesome. If you can think of like good ones, and they're kind of fun as soon as you think of them. Like, oh, I want to do my version of that. In my, look, if Hitchcock was like, Narwhal, what do you got for me? Hitchcock pulled a lot of his story ideas straight from the newspapers. And it's funny too, because he would build a whole movie just because he liked one scene that would be like a very suspenseful scene. Because even that can be kind of rare to have like a super cool suspenseful scene. And he's like, you're telling me I get to do one cool suspenseful scene? I'm in. And so they make whole movies. Like some of this reminds me, like movies feel like way more on the spectrum towards short stories, the way they function, except for like certain types of like whatever, like epic, like Braveheart or whatever.
Well,
Might be a
if
little bit
you want to
longer.
see some of the best short stories in the king, I would say, of short stories, Rod Serling with the Twilight Zone.
Oh yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I mean, amazing. But like in actuality too, if you read like a book of short stories, especially if you don't read books, you're gonna be like, man, these stories aren't short because they're many pages long. But that's just how, compared to a novel,
Yeah.
your baseline is off of. But yeah, I mean, I think Twilight Zone has like the perfect formula and pacing for short stories like that.
Yeah. I talk a little bit about those in a future slide we'll get to. But real quick, I got some types of short stories, types of long stories. So whatever, types of short stories, fairy tale, legend, rumor. I feel like rumor almost counts. Myth,
Yeah.
folklore, proverb, parable, and is parable like kind of like a metaphor? Is that kind of what it means? Like a little
There's
bit.
like a lesson in it.
Yep.
Oh,
It's
okay.
like tortoise and the hare.
Okay. And proverbs are a little bit like that too, but maybe even shorter. I don't know. And that's not even all the, like, sometimes short stories are just like, they're literally just like short stories are kind of, they can get kind of weird, which is what a lot of the fun
Like
comes from.
Children of the Corn. That was a short story originally.
Yeah, cool. Yeah, a lot of Stephen King. He has some good ones. The Body, which was then got turned into, what was that one called? Do you know, Crystal? Or there?
Yeah.
Not off the top of my head.
The name of the song.
Yeah, what's it
Find
called?
That Body.
Yeah, it's all the kids hanging out looking for the dead body.
With River Phoenix. What's it called?
Yeah. And what's his face? The soy guy who grew up to be soy.
Stand by
Shawshank.
Me?
Guy by me.
Yeah, Stand By Me. Yeah.
Yeah.
And Danke says Shawshank. I feel like Shawshank, it was either a novella or maybe, a short story. I can't remember, but I think it was shorter. That got turned into like a 2-hour awesome movie. That one gets, like, on IMDb, it's the highest rated, I think. So it's like for the normies, it's the best movie of all time.
Man, how would a short
Shawshank.
story nowadays get turned into like a film? What would be the pipeline for that now?
It happens all the time.
Really? How do short stories get popular now?
Actually, that's kind of a good question. The New Yorker still publishes them.
You speaking of short stories, there's Whiplash. Did you guys see that?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so that started as a short story online, and a really like even better example than that would be Lights Out. The guy that did Shazam, he did like a little. It was probably barely a minute. The short that he did, and it was just like he had his wife as the main actress, and she's just flipping the lights on and off, and then there's like this sort of a dark shadowy entity, and then she flips it probably the third time and it just like jumps at her, and they turned that into a feature length film, and his wife even made like a cameo at the beginning. So
Wow.
Yep.
So yeah, you would turn a short story into a short film, and then that could be.
Yeah,
because I think like YouTube nowadays, as well as film festivals, are kind of the best way to get your short story out there to people.
I know what you're saying, Jake, because like back when Stephen King was doing short stories and people were publishing in the 60s and 50s, there was so many sci-fi and fantasy magazines that you could publish your stuff in and send it to the editors, and then that's where you'd have serialized stories like The Gunslinger, which is Stephen King's first Dark Tower book. It was originally serialized in parts before it was a novel in a magazine. So now I agree, it would be hard to find places that would do that. If you're a writer,
it'd be great if there was more magazine style stuff where you can get paid to make bits of content. But I suppose YouTube is the one big magazine now, but it's like you have to make everything a fucking video. Well, I suppose you could do dramatic reading. Oh man, I had a friend who wanted to write short stories once, and I'm like, mate, you can hire voice actors to read it, and you can just do like some very simple visual, and you could probably make a whole channel about having.
You'd be
having
surprised who you can get like in touch with now. Like Tara Reid, all these people, Vic Mignogna, like they're all on Twitter.
Yeah.
And if you email them and you're super nice and chill,
well,
you have something good that they want, they might, voice it for you.
Crystal, do you know Space Dandy?
Yeah.
You know the narrator from Space Dandy?
Yes.
I have him voicing the Hollow Professor in my game. Yeah.
No way. You need to send that to me.
I will.
You have to send that.
So every time I watch Space Dandy, which is my favorite fucking anime, I'm like, that's the Hollow Professor narrating the story.
Yeah.
That is so cool.
Space Dandy is one where it's almost more just a series of short stories with the...
It really is. Like, oh man, it didn't really take off as much as other stuff, because it was like they tried to make a Western animation stuff. Like, I think each episode is actually an alternate universe Space Dandy. It's not the same characters all the way through. It's like it actually
because he dies in some episodes, and you're like, damn.
Yeah. Like in one episode, the favorite one is the zombie one, where the entire universe gets turned into zombies, including the narrator. And none of them have to carry on from each other, and they do tie it together in some kind of like, a game multiverse thing, but.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of episodic animation stuff is like that. Like if you look at like Aeon Flux, she dies.
I was thinking that.
But yeah, that's just like your kind of form of storytelling. Like Cowboy Bebop is kind of like that, where it's just like, your venture of the week or so.
It is. You should watch Space Dandy after you watch Cowboy Bebop, Phil. I know I've said it before, but.
It's, if you compare it, then it might be the wrong approach too, because it's its own thing, but it's great. It won me over because it has
made by the same people, and it exists in the same universe. They both use the same currency.
Yeah, but they're like way different. Like, Space Dandy's more goofy and weird, and there isn't an overarching story at all, I think. But Space Dandy, it has like 5 of like the 26 episodes. 5 of them are super emotional, and those are fun to like. Once in a while, you get those, and you're like, oh, that's awesome.
I like though that you have on here for your long stories epic poems, which would be like your more like very very old like myth,
the Odyssey and stuff.
Homer stuff.
Yeah. The Argonauts.
And then like your more like modern poetry would be like short stories, right? Like the Raven, Poe. I would consider that a poem and a short story.
Oh yeah. Yeah, something interesting about this too is a lot of the short stories are oral and a lot of the longer stories are written. So like even the history, it's like as soon as we invent writing, the first thing you can do is tell longer stories. Then I don't know if even like the printing press might have something you can tell more longer stories or
that's a good effect there.
With manga, like the quintessential long story that when I think of long stories, it's One Piece. Like it is.
Yeah, it's the longest story.
We mentioned it last time, but freaking
it's still going.
What is it? Homestuck. That's a fucking long story. That's like Homer's Odyssey length.
Is it?
Yeah, no, it's really long. It's really long.
Yeah.
It is an epic poem. A multimedia epic poem.
What's up, Oliver?
I'm clicking too fast. There we go. So here's some this is like One Piece. This is like here's like a volume of the manga. Here's an arc. Here's like a bigger arc, and here's like One Piece.
Oh, I love this structure so much. I love splitting big story, but in little story, but then it's in smaller scenes and stuff. Like,
yeah. So that's one thing, and that's even like a little bit different than, but kind of like I wrote King Cryptid is like Spider-Man or whatever. But what might not be like it is actually Spider-Man or Batman, not necessarily, because they aren't even telling one story. And I guess this big umbrella could be like it's Batman, but you're like, come on, there is no story there. You just happen
Right,
to be,
yeah, like you get into
Mhm.
mainstream comics and stuff, there's no chronological, canonical timeline, right?
yeah,
Just
Because
a
there's so many
junk.
resets. Sometimes the character is married and aged up for Spider-Man. Sometimes he's a teenager. Sometimes they, throw him back to make him a teenager. If you look at something like Hellboy, which is kind of like one of the only things I could think of in American comics that is a series, but it has a timeline.
Mm.
Characters do age up, but it's like this where you could be like, oh yeah, I read Conqueror Worm is just one story arc from Hellboy, and then you could go to Hellboy Goes to Hell, and there's characters that were in the area of like the Conqueror Worm stories where they're babies, and then
Mm.
when he goes to Hell, they're adults, which is really cool.
So you saying Marvel and DC are the comic book equivalent of Homer Simpson's makeup gun?
says Pikachu's butthole.
Yeah, it says this guy.
Yeah, and so the thing about the but therefore and the and then, I think like there's definitely an and then in between the arcs.
Yeah.
It does kind of pause. It
But
just has
but you
to.
can make the and thens, you can make them really good by just having a time skip. Like, you know what I mean? Like you can add interactivity by having a bit of a time skip.
Yeah,
The and then.
and guess what? One Piece does that. I think that's actually the midpoint of One Piece is a 4-year time skip, and then they cut back and you see things have changed. You're catching up with everyone and stuff like that.
Yeah, like my favorite manga fits into this diagram perfectly. Prison School is like got the whole series, but then right down the middle you have the two arcs where the boys are in the school and then the girl in the prison, and then the girls are in the prison, and then like all the mini little like plots to break out, and then they did it, but then this fucking happened, and now they have to make a new plot. It's like a whole Prison Break thing. Doesn't matter. None of you have read it.
Yeah, I mean that sounds cool though.
The anime.
Yes.
Yeah, the idea of it being fractal too, it kind of just means beginning, middle, and end. Like this arc, this giant one has a beginning, middle, and end. Supposedly, if it was fractal, this arc has a beginning, middle, and end. This arc has a beginning, middle, and end. This has a beginning, middle, and end. It's like how low can you go? You can actually almost go to shots. Like Steven Spielberg will do shots that have beginning, middle, and end, and it could almost be considered like a short story sometimes, even then, but that's like super short. But
those big tracking ones where it starts off and it moves around a room and you like get more and more information as the scene goes on, as the shot goes on.
Yeah, and then here's a little short story. This is like
little tombstone.
Just off in the corner.
Yeah, it's not a building block. I guess we've kind of established. I guess it almost could be because these could almost be like shorter, but that is almost like a volume. I don't know.
So what is the novel? Is this just the huge one story that you do?
Yeah, this is what I try to do. It's always the goal, but I'm always curious, like how long can you maintain that? Like I only go for movie length. Most movies are like that's like a movie. So it's like beginning, middle, and end in the movie, and that's the story, But how long could you even go? Eventually, you have to do this thing where the arc ends and you start a new one. But and I think even One Piece, it actually might hold that record too. Like it has its longest arc is like, I don't know, like 50 volumes or something, maybe more. I don't know, but it's like super, super long. And that's one story with just so much stuff happening. And then you just keep reading it to see. And then that does end and then time skip or whatever. And then you pick it up and catch up later with a new adventure. But it's like however long you can push it. Because this is kind of a fun one because it is pretty challenging or like hard to get right. It can get boring. Like a lot of movies are boring or whatever. Like you really have to get the structure there or whatever for it to kind of work. The longer you go, the harder it is to not be boring, I guess,
Yeah, like I've set Connell up in this kind of way. Like there's the biggest story that would go over like 8 of the actual stories, but then each one of those is split into 3. But you could stop at any point and have still enjoyed the stories that you have read. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like if I died, it would still you'd still be like, oh, that was good. But yeah, like there is like a big. I don't know. I like setting up that big one just so it's there if you do make it.
Yeah, yeah,
But
me
the
too. And
last-
you
the
could
last-
do Bust of Both Worlds pretty easily. Like this,
The last
this what I
two-
like. That could just be this. Like the Oda. He's just like, yeah, I did that. It's awesome. It's this fucker right here is awesome. And then I just did it a bunch more, and it all adds up to even more than the one thing. What were you saying? Sorry.
Do you feel like the last two of those feature-length ones you've made, so you got Hotel Story and Cerberus, you've split both of them in half. Do you think there's two arcs inside the big novel one with those?
No, well, you could. It does have like that structure of like 3-act structure with the big midway turning point, like that. But I wouldn't necessarily consider that like that's not the and then break. Like these are kind of like and then breaks,
Okay.
and but that's still but therefore stuff.
Yeah.
Almost. It's like that's good. You could call it that. It's like how long can you combo the but therefores before it like collapses on itself.
Yeah, it's a dangerous game.
Eventually, you have to go and you start a new story. You build context, and the audience can carry the context from multiple adventures, and that can that's like one thing One Piece does is like the story wouldn't necessarily even be about like Luffy's relationship with the crew or whatever, but that's been built up over 100 other stories, so you're bringing that with you to the new story, kind of.
Man, you know one really. If we're talking about manga. Has anyone else read One Punch Man?
Yes.
Okay. Okay. I'm going to talk to Crystal about this for a second. Have you been reading it till the most recent? Like, are you still reading it, or did you fall off it?
I have. I'm still on.
The current arc is the most annoying fucking and therefore chain. Like, they're trying to make the longest chain ever, but
I think they're
really annoying.
They're doing it on purpose. I really think it's purposefully done.
So let's explain it to the class.
Okay, it's just there's this huge arc happening where there's like a giant monster organization underground, and it's a constant fight between like every single demon and every single hero. And it's almost like they're taking the piss out of long drawn out arcs that are one big battle in of itself. And it's like, oh god, I had to take a break because I
it's
just love
exhausting.
People on the chat don't want spoilers.
Yeah.
There's no spoilers. Did we just explain it?
That was
without
pretty
spoilers,
vague.
right?
I mean,
Yeah, it sounded really vague.
Do you want me to be more specific, Phil?
I don't think Earth
Phil wants you to ruin it for the audience.
Okay, this is better. Just and the funny thing is, the main character isn't there for any of it, pretty much.
Yeah.
It's a big troll, dude.
It's a huge fucking troll.
Isn't that series kind of postmodern? It's like
yeah,
I don't know.
I love it, but it's pissing me off.
Yeah. Yeah,
I just want a yes and. I just want a conclusion of the yes and.
They're gonna drag it out a little longer.
Yeah.
Oh, I see. That's interesting. Yeah. Just give us the yes and then or whatever.
Yes, exactly. Like there's a point where your audience, like, I think you've got to be a really skilled. It's got to be a proofs in the pudding of like you're a skilled creator. If your audience is begging for a yes and, because it means you've dragged it out in a way, but they still actually want to keep going. You know what I mean? Like if they could just stop reading, but if they're begging you for a yes and, it's like what a weird masochistic achievement in creative fiction.
Yeah. Yep. You know, one random thing, speaking of manga, is with Dragon Ball Z, they do this thing where each new arc, he has a new threat, and the threat has to be, greater because he's powering up. And if it just runs for too long, it just naturally gets too ridiculous accidentally. So it ends up being like, well, this guy can destroy universes. And he's like, he powers up after like 500 pages. And he's like, I can destroy universes too. They're like, well, this guy can destroy the multiverse. And it just keeps going. You're like, oh my God, we got too big.
Just kick him in the balls at some point and reset him.
Big fractals.
Yeah. What's next? Long stories. Oh, these are just examples.
More.
One Piece, Berserk, King Cryptid, the Bible. The Bible is another one that's pretty fascinating. It's like that one. The long arc is actually because I was like, is it just a series of short stories? It maybe isn't a long story. And I was like,
Just
no,
a
it is a
long.
long story. Yeah, and that's kind of badass. Like Revelation is the end. It's like super epic.
Dude.
Who's read it? Who's read the whole Bible
Me.
out of all of us?
Crystal has.
I
Yeah.
really mean to read it, but reading is so difficult for me, and that's a lot of
Okay,
reading.
dude. So like the best way to go about it is to get like a really awesome like audiobook.
Really? You can get
Oh,
the
yeah.
fucking Bible
Yeah,
read by
dude.
like
They've
Can
got
you-
like there's
Okay.
some and like
Christopher Lee?
some of the guys that they have narrating it, like they have like super cool voices, you know, like really like cool, almost noir. They're like you know,
Yeah.
Please
You know what
Enoch-
they need?
send me
You
some
know what I was
Crystal.
thinking is-
Beget Agamemnon and Agamemnon.
Yeah.
Yep.
Someone needs to use Chat GPT to rewrite the Bible like the King James version, but like
Summarize
new-
it.
the
Summarize
new
the
King
Bible.
James. Yeah, yeah. And then
Why?
sell it for
James.
like a lot of money, kind of. Yeah.
Oh
like,
my
be real
god! The
controversial.
summarized
I'll do it.
edition of the
Well,
Bible.
there's actually like a action comics version of the Bible, and it's kind of
I
like
have that
the okay,
the other
yeah, the main bits.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
just the good
Yeah, 'cause-
stuff.
Mhm.
At any point, you can zoom in and you're like, damn, that was awesome.
Yeah,
And all
but
the
like
stuff kinda adds
every
up.
action Bible, they always kind of like skip over like Revelations, and that's some of the stuff that I find the most intriguing. And then it's like, we got like 10 pages.
Yeah.
That's-
Especially because we might be living through it right now. Hey, you never know. But,
you know, like, dude, you know, it's crazy because if you look at it, you know, in the Bible, they're talking about like these different types of angels and stuff, and they have different duties. And, you know, just thinking of like an angel with like 16 wings and like, you know, thousands of eyes is like crazy. Like, you know how crazy that visual is?
yeah.
That's like a monster in Silent Hill, and it's just like,
With
Yeah.
all the
and they
stuff,
always
with all,
skip over it.
with all
yeah.
the stuff we've been desensitized to through fiction nowadays, like the descriptions of the angels, they probably were like, whoa, in the past, but nowadays I'm like, oh, you got a lot of eyes and some wings. Like,
Yeah.
yeah, I've seen some video
Or
game
like
characters
there's like
that
an
look like that.
archangel with like a flaming sword, dude. That
Yeah.
guy's pretty cool.
That's bad.
There's supposed to be an angel with a flaming sword guarding the entrance to the Garden of
Mhm.
Eden, and like,
Yep.
can you imagine if it was the South Pole, and that's why we're not allowed to look at it? The Garden of Eden is at
That
the
would
South
be
Pole,
amazing, dude.
and there's
That'd be great.
and there's an angel walking around with a flaming sword. Like, no,
Well,
no.
he'd have to be like, you know, invisible, I would assume, you know.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Well, it
And
is
then like you
invisible on
step
Google Earth.
over the invisible line and then you get struck, like you just get severed in half. That'd be great.
Richard
Go
Gale,
ahead.
isn't Saint Mill incorporating some of Revelations into Passion of the Christ too?
Yes.
I don't know.
That
Okay,
is
yeah, that's awesome.
that's the word on the street.
That's badass. I can't wait for that
Rumor.
movie. Yeah. Yeah. So real quick, Legends of the Galactic Heroes. You guys ever heard of that one or seen it? I don't know if it's an anime,
What is
a
it?
manga, but it's an
No.
anime.
No.
It's when I googled like other awesome shit like Berserk. They're like, if you like Berserk, because this is sci-fi, but and one thing is it's all about a war. And I'm like, oh, if you do one story about a war, it's gonna be a long story, and then you have an excuse to like tell so many little stories within it and characters, and like the Odyssey is a little bit like that too. You know, the Iliad before the Odyssey, I guess. So that's one kind of cool classic way to tell a long story, is just to do something about a war. And when we were talking about the Bible, another thing that made me think is like the Bible's cool because it'll follow a guy and then he dies and you follow his kids, and then
Yeah.
he dies and then you follow someone else. So it's like just being unshackled from having to follow one person. That's a cool idea for a longer story, to like just be able to do that. Actually,
And it's a
speaking of
good
that,
passing of the torch too, you know what I mean? And a lot of people now can't set up the torch pass. Like they
Yeah.
utterly fail. It's like, okay, you want to have like a Star Wars movie where you have new people, right? Well, what you have to do for that is bring the old people and have the new people kind of like have like some respect for the people that came before them, they kind of interact a little bit, they're friendly, and then the torch pass, and then it'll
Yeah.
probably go over a lot better than it
Yeah,
did.
you have the old people can have their moment in the sun, a final good glory moment or whatever.
Yeah, like
Right.
They could even
everybody
die,
has
but
to
you
mingle
don't assume.
And
Yeah,
before
yeah.
you
and
pass
have
it
to
on.
approve of the next guard,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Hey,
Yeah, actually, the way that the they do the torch pass now, where they do it so bad, is they're like, "Fucking kill this stupid white man, so we can put in the new."
In the
one."
first 10 minutes, yeah. Because
Yeah.
a perfect way, it's kind of like the new Ghostbusters. I think that did a little bit better with the torch pass because they have the kids of one of the Ghostbusters, right? Or the grandkids. And then you kind of follow them and like how his kind of being absent from their lives kind of affected them. And then that leads to the old gang getting back together, coming together at the end with the new group of characters. So you really have to like have that balance of mixing it in, the new and old,
Yeah.
but also, the previous, they're getting older, so that kind of like passing, like you are now responsible or whatever, and you can take care of the dog or have a dog.
Yeah, that's cool. Yeah,
Yeah.
FKCA says that was done pretty respectfully. Yeah, I think so. That's one more rare example where it was
100%.
done
Yeah,
done well.
Speaking of passing on the torch respectfully, isn't that supposed to be episode 27 and you put it as 24?
Oh my god.
Alex VRB in the
Oh,
chat
no.
is raging.
I know. Well, I thought
That's
I kind of
great.
blamed Jake because I looked at the last one Jake did, and it was episode 23, and I was like,
What?
"Is it now 24 then?"
Oh,
Yeah.
Oh no. It's all my fault.
Wow.
Let me check the
Yeah.
playlist.
Wow. I know
Yeah.
I didn't mess up at all.
Oh my god, I did mess up.
Oh
it is my
my
fault.
God.
It's my fault.
Yeah.
I'll edit that right now.
So I meant to say something. I was like, "We'll deal with it later." So whatever.
Okay,
It's
cool.
Jake's fault.
and then you just brought it up on stream.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and I was
Yeah.
the one trying to rag on
Gonna
you for it.
drag
That's
him,
amazing.
dude.
I should have bet you
No.
money. I could have won money from you there.
Ah, amazing.
Thank you. Yeah, someone's
Yeah.
complimenting my mask. My best friend got it for me for my birthday for some reason, but it's cool.
Yeah, that's a really cool. What is it? Steampunk. Like, yeah, steampunk's fucking awesome, man. Like,
Yeah, there's this new thing I just learned about. It's called steampunk.
yeah, have you heard of it before? I've never. It's so fresh and new.
Yeah, it's like
Dude.
regular punk, but with more steam involved.
Yeah, like fucking like cogs and shit and pipes and like valves,
right.
like normal clothes, but with like pipes and valves on them.
And brass.
Dude.
Yeah, always brass. It's
Lots
just
of bronze, brass,
Dude.
so cool. It's just-
patina.
This is cringe.
Wait, I wonder if she knows we're being sarcastic on that.
Yeah.
I know. I know.
That's no
Just gotta mess
excuse.
with you. It's so cringe.
Oh my god, guys!
Camel Moon says, "What is happening?"
It's
We're
best
doing
not to
s-
ask, my dude.
A weird presentation. What did I write on this one? What the hell does this say?
We're
What?
talking about
Working on a movie
short
halfway.
stories versus long stories.
Yeah, growers and
get their-
showers.
Yeah. So this is like the midway point of this presentation, just some weird shit to mix it up. But it says, walking on a movie halfway through. You guys ever done that on like TNT when you're a kid growing up? And
Yeah.
have you ever done it where you actually haven't seen the movie? And do you think theoretically you actually could be entertained and still want to watch, or would it be boring? Or sometimes you walk in, yeah, like you've already know it, then you just want to see the scene or whatever. Reading a book backwards is a little bit like that. It's like you lose all context, all authorial like intention, and like what is even there. There is a little bit of that like arc that we see, the fractal arc of beginning, middle, and end on some of these scenes or whatever. Those can still kind of pull you in, I think, is a little bit my idea. And then I was saying there's a funny modern comparison with, like, if you think of Spielberg and his advice to not be boring. YouTube has gotten really good at that, and they can make 4-hour videos that are totally not boring. Like Wendigoon. Do you guys ever watch him?
Oh,
Crystal?
dude, yes.
I
I watch him like all the
Love
time.
some of this stuff.
Yeah.
Like his Paradise Lost and Regained videos are fucking great.
Dude, that's
Yeah.
Yeah.
perfection.
Yes.
Perfection, dude.
Yes.
Yeah. And like, I don't know, that's like an interesting way to think about it, that there's long, like, I don't know, it's another thing that kind of frees you up. It's like uh stories and movies, and they aren't special. Like, we're getting destroyed by YouTube right now, so you can do whatever you want to try and survive. Looney Tunes. Why did I write that? But yeah, Looney Tunes. And,
Well, I guess they're short
Short stories.
yeah, they are.
Yeah.
There's some
Very
classic
very
short stories.
self-contained.
I mean,
Yeah.
all the Adventure Time episodes, like Jake the Dog Suit going on, like they're 15 minutes long.
Right.
And they have a little fun story in them.
And I feel like that is kind of what made like our childhoods and stuff, like those short stories, self-contained stuff, not this, 12 episode, 2 hour long, very long form storytelling things that everybody's trying to make for streaming services now. You kind of lose that nowadays. And maybe it's because we're older now and we don't watch a lot of children's entertainment, but I kind of miss that aspect of things. And that's what, Pete Samedi talks about when he's talking about King Cryptid, those self-contained episodic issues that, he's used to from when he was a kid reading comic books. A lot of that technique and skill gets lost nowadays.
There's kind of a theory, and it's interesting that you say that, like, when you're kids that had more of a meaning, like Looney Tunes short stories. There's a theory where when you've learned how a plot structure works and which plot points go into a story, if you kind of like see the same amount again or same mix again, it's like, well, I've seen it. So the way to kind of like feature creep your like appetite for stories is just more plot points. So like it makes sense that we move into a world where it's like huge seasons of all of these plot points being woven together and like this huge dense story that you can't even pack into a film. But as a kid, you're probably like, what the fuck is going on?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. The walking in halfway through, it kind of feels like if it's a good story, you actually can do that, which is weird, but I don't know.
Yeah.
It would happen on TV all the time. I mean, Sundays, you just turn the TV on, and sometimes there'd be like an old film that was already playing, and you're like, yeah, I'm enjoying the vibe of this film, and then you just kind of like think what the beginning would have been, and then you just
Yeah. That happened to me watching From Russia with Love, a good James Bond, Sean Connery one, and I came in like at this scene where it's the guy who plays the fisherman in Jaws. I don't know his name. He's a famous actor. He's amazing, and he's like this blonde Bond. He's like a proto Bond, so it's Bond versus Bond on a train, and he's undercover working with Bond. Bond doesn't know. It's so great, and I watched. I just loved it. I was like, man, this is the best shit I've ever seen. And I was like, I gotta watch this movie. So I went back and watched the whole movie. And I was like, the whole movie was boring, and the train was so awesome. The train was the best part. And
I wonder if coming in halfway through like has some free interactivity because you're just trying to like piece together the past from what you're being given right now.
Yeah. It's Robert Shaw is the fisherman. Like, swimming with bow-legged women. You got soft hands. Yeah. So, and then Looney Tunes, because even those you could like walk in halfway through, which is interesting. Short examples of short stories: Rikki Tikki Tavi, which that got made into a cartoon by Chuck Jones, who's a Looney Tunes guy. The Lottery. A lot of these we might have read like either in school or whatever. Do you guys remember The Lottery? It's where
Why do I know Rikki Tikki Tavi?
It's the mongoose versus the cobras, and it's a cartoon. Like it got turned into a cartoon. The Lottery is the one where they have to draw straws to see who randomly gets stoned to death. Like, they have to do it once a year. And the whole story is just kind of showing that concept. It's kind of horrific. Telltale Heart, obviously. Powers for Algernon. Some of these, there's a Simpsons episode of all these, pretty much. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like Occurrence at Owl Creek Bridge. This one was and this one was a Twilight Zone episode, and this one really inspired Donnie Darko.
Right. Well, it was like wasn't it like it was a foreign short film that Rod Serling saw at a film festival and he's like, I need to put this on Twilight Zone.
I
Oh,
need to
cool.
steal this.
Yeah, and that's another cool one where you're like, is this sci-fi? Like, not exactly. Like, what is it? It's just awesome. It's just weird and kind of horrific. And yeah, Gift of the Magi is famous. You guys remember that one?
Mhm.
Yes.
Yeah, the husband like cuts his cufflinks to buy the girl a comb. She cuts her hair to buy him something for his cufflinks or whatever. something like that.
The first time I saw that, it was like a Mickey Mouse short, and
Oh yeah, they did that there too.
Yeah. It's I don't know. Yeah, it's like kind of cool. Kind of like whatever. It's like almost cheesy, but you're like, bravo.
It literally
bravo,
just
sir.
turned into one half, like fraction of a scene in a Futurama episode where they're exchanging Christmas presents.
Yeah.
Yeah.
A Good Man is hard to find. I've read that, but I forget. I think it's about a killer, maybe, but it's Flannery O'Connor. So she did that quote at the beginning. Do you guys, anyone remember that one, or have they read it?
I remember the porn version of Hard Man is good to find, but
oh my
Gee. Of course you do. Of course.
Yeah.
what's Cat Person?
So this one, you guys, this was 2017 in the New Yorker, right around Me Too. This Cat Person short story came out, written by this young woman. I read it. It's honestly great, but it's very like of the moment, and it's about her having awkward hookup sex and kind of regretting it with kind of a creep, and like some other stuff. But it's like really good. And then she got a book deal. It totally went viral. Everyone read it. You guys might even remember. I don't know, but then she got a book deal for New York Times or whatever. Wrote a bunch of short stories, published them. None of them were as good. Like this one was like lightning in a bottle, kind of.
Yeah.
And that's the way some of like it's a short story. People do put it in like the pantheon with all these others now. But so that's the most recent story that like people will be reading it in school and college in 20 years, like guaranteed. And it's not even like a bad thing. I don't think it's not like, because it is a little bit lightning in a bottle. It's not really like they raised up something that didn't deserve it for purposes of the agenda or whatever. It's like a legitimately interesting, weird by like picture of what it's like kind of for people in modern, like in the modern world kind of or whatever. Bear Meat is another one that was in the New Yorker that my dad made me read. And this one I do send it to people randomly once in a while because I love it. I've read it like five times or something. But it's about the Bear Meat is about, it's all about hiking and mountain climbing, but it's about doing stuff that actually sucks. And pretty much the only reason you do it is so you can have the story later. But that like, it's kind of like the beauty in that of like, why do we even do things that suck? Like you could be on a mountain and it's freezing and you like are almost dying, but then it's terrible but then once it's done, you just feel so good and you can share that experience with the people you did it with forever. But it's actually within that, there's a really cool story and structure and he tells about his friend who he met, who was like this like super legendary, awesome dude. He said he used to disappear for 3 days with 2 avocados or an avocado in each pocket and just be gone in the mountains for 3 days. It's like, oh my God,
just
this guy.
2 avocados.
Yeah. Like, what a badass. I'm like, I want to grab an avocado and walk into the woods. You got to make sure that you have a witness to see you do it. The problem is I'd eat it all in one day and get like really hungry after that.
You can go 3 days without eating easy.
Not if you're walking, you kind of sugar crush.
Oh, true. If you're doing
Yeah.
stuff, I suppose there's 9 days I didn't eat anything. I was just sitting on my ass.
I think a lot of short stories, kind of why they came about was of the times too. Like you look at, Poe's career was basically based on almost all short stories published in newspapers and magazines, and that's because he was a working class writer. He was writing to make money, and that's what was making writers money back then was short stories, because working class people would read them. They'd pick up the newspaper and read this stuff.
Yeah. Just Kev Ryan says The Shellfish Giant by Oscar Wilde. I haven't read that. Is that good? I'd be into reading some literary short stories. You know, that was on that list. We were going over it yesterday, Crystal, like of the agent who's like things they want, things they don't want, and she wants anything sapphic, which means lesbian. She's like anything sapphic, but no. One of the things she didn't want is she goes no literary fiction. We're like, what do you want? Like
she wants nothing.
yeah. Oh, she's like no like horror, no thriller, no. She's going down all the genres.
Nothing, but she did want heist films.
Yeah,
though, which
the
was
one heist. She's like, I'll take
interesting.
heist.
Lesbian heist.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then she said there was one she wants, and it said something like someone who's overpowered and chooses chaos, something like that.
Yes.
Classic.
Yeah, like oh, this sounds
Glorified
kind of like
villainy. Yes.
Quite the self-insert there.
Yeah, totally.
Well, if it's a lesbian thing, it'd have to be a self-insert.
Yeah. So this is.
I see what you did there.
This is one thing we haven't talked about yet is the real time versus not real time, whatever. I call it like narrator catching you up. This is all, could be because they're like two voices, but it's like two paces. Like so, fairy tales they're never real time. Almost they're always like, a prince did this, found this, then this happened, and then he went and did this. It's like they'll span like 6 months in one page.
Right. Yeah, that would be also
long-ass
point
story.
of view as well too. How the story, the point of view too. Like if your narrator's omniscient, you have to tell something, they know everything.
Yeah, so you can make any story real long by zooming in, but then there's a point too where that gets boring or there's too much of it. Or if you zoom into a moment that doesn't deserve it, like any moment with suspense will deserve it, so you can kind of zoom in.
Mm-hmm.
But if it's just like a guy walking to get some booze for no reason, and you just zoom in and you're like, he's like smelling the flowers and sees a bird and he follows the bird for a little bit. Some of that's a little Shaggy Doggy actually, but that's one thing. Shaggy Dogs, they zoom in a fair amount.
Hey, if you're doing that stuff to build up the character, then it can work. Like it's like this is how that he's gonna meander through life.
Isn't there something in a Shaggy Dog? Sorry to cut you off. Sorry. You finish and then I'll go.
No, it's done.
Okay.
Perfect.
It's what's it called? We were talking about it. The Big Lebowski. There's like one point where he randomly gets in a car because he needs a ride, and the guy's playing the Eagles, and he just goes, "Oh man, the Eagles, man! I fucking hate the Eagles." And the guy's like, "You get out! You get out!" And he gets kicked out of the car, and then you're like, "What just happened?" It was like 5 minutes of him trying to get a ride, getting kicked out of the ride.
That's a perfect demonstration of his character, though. That's not just nothing. It's like in Lord of the Rings when he spends like ages just describing fucking Gandalf making smoke rings or whatever. It's like, it's not just some fancy prose. He's demonstrating like the skill of this wizard to make fucking smoke rings.
Mm-hmm. But it also lets us know about like the character too, like specifically in that Big Lebowski.
Yeah. Like he's the kind of guy that would do that, and it's almost like that is even more perfect because it makes any other situation he's going to be in, it's going to be unpredictable. You know what I mean? It almost builds anticipation in any other future scene.
Yep.
Yeah. I do. It does seem like manga does this pretty well of zooming in, but actually, when you're talking about that One Piece fight, Jake, that almost feels like that's part of the troll. Is they zoom in all the way and stay there longer than they need to.
Oh, there's
fun to fuck with you.
One of the last scenes in Prison School is like basically a fucking entire volume, and it covers the span of like 5 minutes in real time.
Yeah. And so manga will do that, and it's like pretty impressive and cool. And that's something that I'm interested in too. Hotel Stories a little bit like that. It's like 300 pages, covers 5 hours. So like the page to hour ratio is almost real time kind of thing.
It gets excruciating.
But you could do it too much. But that's always a good question to ask of even like if you're looking at any story, or if you're like adapting a short story to a feature film. I think that's maybe a lot of why feature films can work as adapting a short story sometimes, is you're just making it real time instead of making it this.
Well, those real time moments in films are your set pieces, right?
Yeah,
everything
yeah,
goes
yeah.
down.
Like Jurassic Park. Anytime you say set piece, I always think Jurassic Park T-Rex. And
Yeah.
that's like, yeah, you
Yep.
can imagine like if they cut away, they ruin it. So they have to stay and they stay in the moment until it kind of ends or whatever. And then they
Yeah,
can cut
I
away.
like your observation that you need a good set piece in a film, and then a set piece is slowing down to fully real time. And it's like, okay,
Mhm.
what situation? It's like the steps of a heist or someone reloading shit. Like, isn't John Wick like slowing down to real time with all his shooting and then reloading his guns constantly? That is it one
Yeah,
big set piece?
probably. You know who the like most iconic example of this? I think it is Tarantino. Like he does it so often, and he does it really well because it'll be any point where you're like, "Damn, this is a pretty intense moment," and he's like, "Yep, I'm just gonna sit here for 45 minutes till it plays
Yep.
itself out."
Yep.
Well, I think he gets that a lot from Sergio Leone's Western films, like
Oh
the,
yeah,
the build of scenes and scenery and sitting on people's faces for emotion. Like if you look at Once Upon a Time in the West, the first 15 minutes of that film, there's no dialogue and it's just setting,
Mhm.
and character, and builds to the train pulling up with a big roar, and then when it pulls away, you're introduced to a hero character. So, yeah, I mean that stuff, especially in film, is awesome. Like you can really hit home with that. In comics, you have less room to exploit it, especially if you're doing like short story comics as well, which is something I wanted to hit on. Like I did for when I wrote, we talked about this last week, I think, that short story I wrote for Passion for Drawings fantasy magazine. And someone in the chat asked, can a short story be 300 pages? And I looked it up and it says there's no maximum length, but the average short story is 1,000 to 7,500 words at around 10 to 25 pages. For short stories. So yeah, the fantasy story I wrote for Passion is 8 pages and it's all prose. There's some illustrations on it too and stuff like that. But I did for, if anyone got the Myths of the Lost Pages book, I did the short stories in that, and each story was 4 pages each, introducing a character. And so this was just like kind of a exercise for me to kind of learn the characters more, So it's like basically a vignette of what the character is about, what it could do, and in a different scenario. And it's 4 pages for each of them. I think I did 9 of them in that book total.
Nice. Yeah, that's when I backed, and that was way early CG. That was one of the first times you came on my channel. We chatted a little bit about that. We talked about short stories and stuff.
Yeah,
and they are fun. That's cool. You say vignette too. I should add that to the list of short story words.
Definitely. Like if you look at something like, usually they'll do this for like video games a lot. If you have like a video game with an opening cinematic, which is basically a vignette that lays down the footwork for your character and world, and could be like anywhere from 2 to 5 minutes, like that is perfect.
Yeah, any Souls game.
Yeah. And I think that is very relatable to what I was doing with my 4-page comics. And I think that really helps you kind of flesh an idea out, even if you do it just as an exercise to establish things, and can really help your audience too if you put that out as like an ash can, or even if you throw it online digitally, just so your reader is able to bite onto something and you could gauge your audience for that.
And kind of jumping off of that too, if you look at a lot of manga, after you get done with the volume, the creator kind of has like maybe 4 panels or something like that, and it's just like a super short, like little wholesome short story type thing going on at the end.
Yeah, is that very regular in manga?
Yeah.
That's cool they can do that. Those are hard to think of. That's like a flex. They're like, by the way, I could have a whole nother career doing like Scott
and
Adams
it's
shit
almost usually like it's, there's like, let's say you have like a shonen, action manga, and it's almost kind of diffuses the seriousness a little bit and like a little quirky, humorful way at the end.
Do they draw him chibi sometimes, or
Yeah.
Sometimes, yeah.
I
Yeah.
think they do that because they're published in magazines, and they might basically
Mhm.
have sections in like Weekly Shonen Jump
Shonen Jump,
where
Yeah,
they
they
put
do.
the strip ones, and then when they do the
Yep.
volumes, it's like, well, these
They
are the
add
strip.
it there, yeah.
Yeah, they put it in. But if you're
Pretty-
making, it makes you think that if you're making volumes of something, you almost want to like mimic that and just do it
Mhm.
for the sake of it. That would be fun.
Mhm.
Yeah.
So I had a question about that manga stuff because I was just chilling out yesterday, and I have a bookshelf in my living room, and I have No Gun's Life, which is a manga that I read the first volume. And it's about this guy who has a gun for a head instead of a chainsaw. And so before Chainsaw Man ever came out, and I'm like, oh, this character looks awesome. He looks like a detective with like a trench coat. He's got this big ass revolver for a head.
Yep. I've seen the memes.
So I had the second volume. I didn't get to read it, but I was flipping through it. I'm like, oh, art's pretty cool. And the last story it wasn't super short. It was probably like, I don't know, maybe 15 to 20 pages, maybe less. And it was like that. It was like it wasn't like cutesy or heartwarming or anything. It was actually kind of tragic. But I'm like, oh, this one's short. And I just read that. And it was pretty cool and gave you an insight. Even if that was the only thing you read, it laid out like what the character was all about and his situation dealing with a client that hires him.
Did the art look older? Because that might be the one. Because very often they'll do a one shot before they do a series, and that one shot will be how they get the series. So sometimes they put
They'll
the
include
original
that too,
one
yeah.
shot.
Yeah.
Like, when I was reading Berserk, halfway through one of the volumes, it like the art got really crappy and things got really
You're
weird.
like,
And I'm like, what is happening?
Yeah, it's prototype Berserk, right, or something like that.
Yeah, and it
It's
was
like his college short story.
the kind of one shot nested in. But do you
Because
think
they'll
that might
have
be what it was, Bill?
competitions too, to where it's like, okay, send us 8 pages, and maybe this will get turned into like a series or something like that, or appear in Shonen Jump. So then you have those little short ones there.
Do you think that's what it might have been, Phil, or was it like a post retrospective?
I'm not sure. It didn't really say either, and yeah, but it could have been like that, or maybe it was like something for a special annual. They didn't have anything that was going
anniversary.
For
it's like it
arc
in freaking Spy Family. They have like the first arc, and then they have like one random one-shot adventure where they go to the aquarium, and like that was a one-shot that was halfway through the series, and then when they adapted it to the anime, like they worked it into the main course of events. Like it wasn't just a one-off adventure; it was in the arc, and then that anime got really confusing after that. And
I want to tell you the plot of that short story though, because it's kind of cool. So he's got this gun for a head, and his thing is he can be hired to help out with advanced human situations. And I know that's not the word they use, but it's like people that have cybernetics on them, like him. So he doesn't know why he has this body or why he's got a gun for his head, but he's hired and he's got this, the big gun for a head, but he can't pull his own trigger, right? So there's this like, deep metaphor for someone else has to hire him and they pay him to pull his trigger to kill people. And so this girl comes in and she wants to hire him to kill this famous war hero. And he's like, this is this famous war hero. Why would you want to kill this guy? He's like, I'm not going to do that. He's like, well, she says during the war, the war hero guy would gather up these orphans who were amputees and had missing parts, and to give them a better life, he would give them cybernetic legs and arms, but in turn, they had to work for him in a sex trade. And they're like, oh shit, this guy's a horrible person. She's like, yeah, he took my life and family away from me. And he's like, okay, I'll take the job. And so he hunts this guy down, and the orphan girl or whatever is there with him because she wants to pull the trigger. And he busts out this this guy's truck and gets him up against the wall, and she's like, oh, you're here, Catherine. He talks to the girl, he sees her, and so he wasn't this bad guy that she said he was. She just wanted to kill. She just wanted to pull No Guns Life's trigger, or whatever his name is, Inuo or whatever. And so it turned out she was the bad guy, and she had like all her cyborg arms were guns. They called her like full auto Catherine. She went psycho and wants to kill him now. And the guy that she hired him to kill was one of her like lackeys, and he had brought her another set of arms and legs because he didn't want her to be evil anymore. He didn't want her to have all these like,
Dude, I'm gonna have to look this up.
guns.
Like,
It sounds sweet.
interesting.
it was this cool twist. And so he has this suitcase with two regular arms and legs that don't have guns in them to give to her. It's like, no, I'm gonna be this monster forever. This is who I am. I'm full auto Catherine. She, her arms turn into guns.
Full on. Okay.
Away. And so she's gonna kill the gunhead guy, who's the good guy. He's like all shot up. He's on his knees, and she's like, you're just a tool to be used because you can't pull your own trigger. And then he says something cool. And then the next panel is he has his arm behind him, and then her prosthetic arm that doesn't, the guy was going to give was the extension pulling his own trigger, and then he shoots her.
Whoa. Is that the one time he pulls his own trigger?
Yeah. Pretty cool.
He should have figured that out earlier. He probably would have saved him a lot of trouble.
Yeah.
I didn't realize he could do that. It's like, oh wait, I just need a longer arm.
That is badass though. That reminds me just real quick about a lot of mangas like this. Mad Max is like this. Some of Batman, a lot of the longer stories get into this where the main character, he kind of just gets pulled into a pre-existing story, and then that's the story. Like so. Her beef with
almost
that
like
guy.
Sherlock Holmes kind of.
Yeah. So that's so many cool like scenarios involve that of like what Jake was saying. The portal. It's almost the portal could be if you're just open for work and you get hired by different people. You're getting pulled into a different world every time.
Yeah,
Star
like
Trek. It's like that every new job.
Any detective thing, like say Columbo, for example, you got the home of their office or whatever, and then you have like the worlds you jump into are like all these different crime scenes every time, and then the epiphany is like the solution to the riddle of like the mind puzzle of the characters that committed the crime.
Yeah, Zed says, "Good job, Jake. You ruined it."
Wait, what did I do?
You're like, you should have done that way sooner.
Oh yeah. He could have just got one of those litter pickers for like picking up trash. And just oh wow! Or just like a bar. It's like a fucking pipe. Like, wait a minute, I can do this.
He's like a bear trying to scratch his back on a tree. He's like, bro, I'll get you and pull my trigger.
He does have a gun built into his hand though, which is cool too. But when he shoots his like head, his noggin bullet or whatever, it's huge. Like it just like
a cannonball.
Yeah, well, I mean they're huge, and like all that was left of her was just her legs still dangling in the wall, and like a.
Why did she need him to kill the lackey, or did he find the lackey?
I mean, she wasn't like this crazy thought out villain. She just her motivation is like, I just want to pull your trigger.
Oh, she just wanted to have fun with his gun head.
Like twist him,
yeah.
Did she mount the back of his head when
I'm
just imagining the
whack ass. You got to go back and listen to my David Lynch impersonation. It's great, but yeah, you missed it.
The David Lynch impersonation that you do, so you do it intense all the way through. Sometimes he goes quiet and like says the little bit in a calm way, and it breaks up the one.
Actually, if I really try and get good, you know what he does? He closes his eyes and goes like this.
Yeah. I've been watching some David Lynch interviews, and I didn't realize how close your voice was to it. And I was like, whoa, he really does do it.
Yeah.
He's really getting them.
His kids are watching movies on their telephone, on a fucking telephone. And it is such a sadness.
It is, dude. You know how tiny that screen is?
Yeah.
Yeah, here's a...
No Guns Life. There he is.
I thought it would be. I thought it was gonna be like freaking 20 feet long.
Much better. Yeah, the chapter break
spreads are pretty badass. They got some good detail on them. I was trying to find one where he's like lounging with this hot chick on a sofa.
He's in the home setting. He's in the step 1 of this story circle. He's in the Planet Express HQ. Or the Simpsons family house.
Let's see this.
Or what? The Smiling Friends offices.
That's the last slide. This is the last slide. But the other thing is, I don't know what the point of my presentation is. Was there any points?
The point was, let's talk about stuff.
Yeah, we never really talked about long versus short storytelling, which are stories.
Oh, so we didn't even get to the main thing. We just talked. This was a Shaggy Dog thing. What I did.
There you go. That perfect.
There we go.
You added circularity to it. You put a bow on it. It's fine. I don't think it has to be. The trouble with setting up these episodes is if you try and make a grand point, it can make it like difficult, and sometimes it can even miss. But genuinely, just having a discussion is fun, man. Like it doesn't have to weave together to make some grandiose gestalt. I
always go for the gestalt, and then I fail.
I always go for the gestalt and fall on my face. But no, we did compare them. But like, how could you compare them? I mean, I guess it depends what mood you're in.
Different things, you know.
Yeah, we need more short stories. Maybe you're saying that.
It's very. Oh, sorry.
Yeah, speaking of the short stories, when it comes up, you get kind of like nostalgic for them. You're like, damn, they're good. It'd be fun to do some more short stories.
Is there a strategy or formula for approaching writing a short story? Like,
it's hard. Yeah, one thing I think is that you can't. It's hard. You almost can't sit down and write them. They have to like come.
They almost come to you.
Yeah, and you'll get like one or two a year. You need to know
the ending though before you start.
Yeah,
100%.
Oh, that short stories. You'd imagine the ending is
like
the story
all about the ending,
backwards, right?
Yeah,
like
and
oh my god, you could approach them both from that. A long story, you're thinking of the beginning, and then you set the ship off and let it sail. A short story, you think of the ending and work backwards.
Yeah. The other thing, as I'm thinking about it, that's useful, I want to write down is like short stories it's like for a longer story, it could be the one character walking into various short stories, like Mad Max or Sherlock Holmes. Like that feels really nice and cool and freeing. And I'm like there's some ideas that I've been a little bit dead-ended on, and just thinking of that, like I need to stop thinking of the main story, just think of a cool short story and then put my guy in it, and then
that's like that's when you get like these character driven exercises, right, where you have a kind of a character fleshed out, throwing them into different scenarios, and that's kind of a way to have like a lasting IP or brand. Because then it's you're banking on your character.
I love creating those. The thing is, I put so much energy into creating those setups for like here are all the puzzle pieces, like Crystal said, the dollhouse. That I found it difficult to do the other one where it's like, okay, what's the cool story? Do you know what I mean? Because like you could see the characters having fun and like, oh, these are the interactions they'd have and this is what they'd get into. But like making a really fucking finely tuned, punchy short story, I want that skill, and I wonder how you get there. Just read a lot of them, I guess.
Yeah, they're hard. And then I've done a collection of short stories, you know. And there's one that I really like, and it's Naked Samurai. And I wrote that a while ago. But so it's 5 pages, and the whole point of the short story is just to kind of explain the concept, and then it's done once the concept's explained, basically.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
But so that's kind of the point. But then that one, it was my dad, because my dad told me in the Olympics during the summer, he's like, yeah, if you're hiking in the rain, he'll strip to his undies, put his clothes in his backpack, because then your clothes stay dry. Because if your clothes get wet, it's way harder to dry them out.
Yeah, your skin can get dry easy.
Yeah, your skin getting wet's no big deal. And then so when you get into camp, you can stay warm and dry way easier. So he's walking in these mountains like naked, and I was like, what if a samurai did that? And that was like,
that's great.
That's fun.
Yeah.
Yeah, but I think short stories exactly with what you said there with Naked Samurai, it's kind of your like proof of concept in comics. I think it really helps with that and get your creative juices flowing. So maybe you can extrapolate it into something longer. But yeah, I think sometimes, especially in this medium, it's almost easier to do something that's more in ways long form because we're so attached to our characters. And if we do something that's like short story, you're probably only creating this world and characters for that one story. And if you don't, then it turns into something that's longer than that, you know, if that makes sense, you know? So, and again, like as a creator, I'm guilty of this. We're very attached to our characters and we don't we're too scared to let them go and be in one thing and have that world end with the reader, you know, reading the last words on the page.
Well, it's also you put so much time into thinking of these characters and the concept and the design to everything that you're like, you want to fully explore it.
Right.
Like they're so real to you. Yeah.
Yeah, you kind of like want to own it. But if you're doing a short thing and then you jump through a few of them, it's almost like someone could take the energy you created and then they switch it up a bit and they expand on it. It's like it can easily get nicked.
Yeah.
Way.
You know, too, speaking of, well, like, Jake, you were saying how it's hard to write a short story or to just start writing it, or you need to read some to get the inspiration. But I was like, from the Shaggy Dog approach, this would be a little more of like that exercise thing, but you could, I think, just write like, all right, like it is literally like a guy walking to get booze and you're staying real time even though you shouldn't. And then, so you know you're going to throw this out unless something comes up. But like some shit might come out of the ether just doing that. Like you might
I'm going to do it. I'm going to try and be like, say, like try and get it done in one day. And then every now and then do just like, okay, I'm going to write a short story today.
Yeah.
It has to be done in that day.
Yeah. I'm trying to think of where sometimes that is like inspiration and it feels good. If I can think of an example where like you are kind of searching blindly, hoping that something comes up and then it kind of does. And you're like, yes.
And that's kind of a good way if you are experiencing writer's block on whatever you're working on to kind of step back and do something small to kind of gain that ground back to get back into the longer form stuff. That helps too.
I can see that. Yeah. I've been doing this. I don't know. I don't think I've ever really done this before, but writing like 3 to 5 pages a day and then letting myself kind of stew on that and then coming back the next day, treating it like that, especially because, you know, I work during the day and stuff like that. And I'm lettering my own stuff as well. And I feel like it's kind of working. I don't know. I'm also doing a kind of like Marvel method as well because I'm working with an artist that wants to do a book like that. So, and I'm like, hey, I got, you know, this amount of time to my deadline. If I just keep doing this, I'm going to hit the deadline, you know?
Yeah. I like lying down in the dark with my eyes closed, facing the wall, thinking, and you all the plot points of a one whole story like form.
Kind of visualizing it.
Yeah, and then you kind of like you're writing all the notes in your phone. You like come up for a minute and write it down so you can start thinking of other stuff.
Yeah.
And then I go to the computer and basically look at all the notes and just turn it into like a summary of like events that happen and then key sent bits of dialogue that are poignant to what's happening. And then like that's like this little nugget that's there, and then you know the next step would be like doing all the thumbnails, and you could just have those. They're like it's like a couple of pages. It ends up being that could be expanded to like a 30-page story or something if you actually thumbnailed it. I like doing that.
Yeah. And when we were listening to some of the short stories, it is pretty interesting that it's like I swear they must have like a book with like a legend or whatever you'd call it, like in the writer's room for The Simpsons, this giant like encyclopedia with a 3-ring binder where you could just turn to like tropes.
The series Bible, they kind of have that type of thing.
The steal from this shit book.
Yeah, like do an episode with this plot this scenario, this short story, do this version, but Homer is the guy or whatever.
Right,
blah, blah, blah.
exactly.
Like, because even Flowers for Algernon, they did a Simpsons version, they did a Futurama version, and they're all like, those are some of the most emotional, memorable episodes of each of those series. Is the version of that.
I really wish someone would try and make a good episodic show now. I suppose they're trying that still with like Rick and Morty, Smiling Friends. Like everything's gone arcs now though, and it's like, okay, Futurama, the fucking episode where they go to Zoidberg's home planet. Like how much shit they do in that episode, and how much lore and world building they put in, how much cool character stuff in one episode. Like the one where they go underwater and they find Atlanta that's sunk, and they have all the mermaids down there. Like all the stuff in that episode. Like
that's funny that it's Atlanta.
It's Atlanta that it was sinking. Atlanta sunk, and the people who escaped was like a handful of people who got away on one boat and the magician. But yeah, like the Always Sunny has
they did a Flowers for Algernon thing too. But Charlie gets smart.
The recent Matt Groening thing, they did Disenchanted, and it's basically the typical Netflix arc method, and it's just it fucking sucks. I really want to do a video which is like how to fix Disenchantment, because no one talks about Disenchantment. It's like I was so excited for it, and it was like, oh, this is going to be the past fantasy version. You got Simpsons in modern day, Futurama, and then you're going to have the past fantasy version. And it didn't hit the mark at all. It was basically the main character was kind of like Amy, and then the little troll guy was kind of like Kif, but Amy didn't like Kif, and then like some kind of like low grade Bender off to the side. Just the characters weren't there. There was no. So I really want to do. I'm thinking of doing a video where it's like how to fix it.
You should. They're doing.
You should.
New episodes of Futurama. Did you see that?
Yeah.
My brother's been watching them.
I wonder if they'll make that an arc or whatever, not episodic anymore.
Yeah, I think it's episodic again.
They're episodic, but the cool thing is, okay, Futurama, the first 4 seasons, and then they did the 4 movies. There are arcs, and those 4 movies are actually fucking good. Like I only really consider real Futurama to be the first 4 seasons, then those 4 movies. Like Bender's Big Score was fucking awesome, and the fantasy one where they went back in time, like that was awesome. So like those worked. They figured out how to make it work. But the thing is, each one of those was its own story. Like it was a 4-episode arc, but it was a I'm Jake the dog. I'm Jake dressed as Jake.
Mortal V got it right. The only person so far. Crystal might have almost got it right. I threw it off because I kept saying Pikachu.
It's just he threw me off because he said Pikachu at first, and I was like, I don't know, man.
Disenchantment would have worked. All you had to do with Disenchantment is add a couple of different characters to make the main cast's power dynamic. Basically, you had like the main character who was just this like girl that did whatever she wanted, and then 2 simps following her around. Like if she'd have had a brother, and they had like a rivalry between each other, and he was kind of like the handsome, suave knight guy, but maybe deep down he was insecure or something, and like he was the favorite and she was pissed off. Like every adventure they went on, they could have had some innate competition between what they were trying to achieve. You know what I mean? There would have been actual conflict. There was never any real conflict. It was just the main character B going around acting like, oh, everything sucks. Oh no. Like And they
just try to tell a longer story, and that it didn't work as well. Because then you compare it. If it's a longer story, you compare it to like Lord of the Rings. You're like, it's never going to be good enough.
It can work. It's just the characters were not there. Like no one made decisions but her. There was one character making all the decisions. In Futurama, all these characters are making all these different decisions that are pulling the story in different directions all the time. Not just like
they did actually. That's even a difference between Futurama and The Simpsons, because they're actually quite different shows, I think. And Futurama is kind of cool because they did have a pretty good character balance, and they had a pretty big cast. And like they do the thing too where there's characters for a long time you kind of hate them, and then they give them a few episodes, and then you start to love them. And like Zoe,
they grow on you.
Simpsons kind of did that too. But there's, speaking of short stories, jokes are almost like that, and like these short comics. People were asking earlier in the chat of like, is there such thing as a one panel comic? And well, that's just like Gary Larson or whatever. But there's a guy on Twitter named Beetle Moses, and he does all these cartoons, and I love them. They're like a weird type of humor. They're like not even like laugh out loud sometimes, but like this one, like.
I mean, I laughed out loud.
Yeah, but it is like somehow the art's hilarious. Like the rain in the background, her eyes twinkling. Is that true? It's true. I paused my game to be here. They start making out.
It's again, it's like the comedy episode that I did. The one point was the absurdity juxtaposition. Like that's the juxtaposition of the seriousness romantic scene, and then just like she's talking about.
Oh, you're right. That's funny to explain it. Yeah. You almost ruin it by
Sorry.
It.
It's like, shut up, dickhead.
What do you think? Like, here's another one. Like, homeless guy buying a bunch of little bottles. Dude's like, what?
Yeah.
It's just him hanging with gnomes.
It's
being really happy.
It's kind of
Those
absurdity juxtaposition.
Yeah. And like it is the art. The art's funny. Like, he's like
Yeah.
super serious, and then he's super happy, and he's got missing teeth.
Mhm.
Beetle Moses, he did do a full comic he released, and it was like 60 pages or something. And it was
Yeah.
this, I think, formatted kind of like this, like not that many panels. You can read it in like 10 minutes. So definitely a short story. But it was great too. It was a lot of fun. But we'll see a few more of these. Like this one, keep moving, human swine. I gotta say, that clear purple casing looks so sick.
Atomic purple. You can get an atomic purple replacement shell for your Nintendo Switch if you're
Oh, that might be a little bit what this is about, sort of.
Yeah, that was the original Game Boy Color. You'd get that in atomic purple.
Oh,
and the Game
dude,
Boy
the
Advance.
Dare program. I got flashbacks. It's like, whoa.
The guy's in the back photographing the drugs. The guy's just looking out the window waiting for him.
Dude.
It's funny, man. Like, whatever.
Like, Jake, did you have anything that was kind of like similar to the Dare program?
No.
It's kind of like the anti-drugs. Like,
There's
Yeah.
so many mental things you guys had over there, which
Okay.
like we didn't have. Everything was pretty milquetoast over here. Like
Mhm.
the most drug thing we had is like some guy came into our RE class and told us about drugs and stuff, and it was
Okay.
like, why are you telling us this? Why are you
Yeah.
why are
Like,
you
it was
showing us the
great.
drugs?
Like, it was a whole spectacle, dude. It's fantastic.
Yeah,
But
like,
also cringe. So then you're like, oh.
it has to just be a massive thing. Anything in America, like the printing missing kids' faces on milk cartons thing, we never got that. You know what I mean? It's like
Yeah.
just every morning at breakfast, you're pretty much staring at like a kid that
You're
died.
pulling out, yeah.
Like-
Or, worse, dude, because a lot of times it's not just that. It's like in combination with other things. Then you
Yep.
see on the
We
milk.
Jake-
didn't have anything like that.
Hey, Jake, explain this one. Sorry.
Okay. Look,
So
I
wait,
may
I'll
have-
read it. He goes, look, I may have overreacted. It's something I'm working on. Hey, it's okay.
I don't get it. 'Cause
It's
I-
the white
I
whale
don't
from
quite
Moby
get
Dick. It's
Oh,
Ahab
shit!
and the
Oh, dude.
Oh my god.
I thought it was like a SpongeBob.
I mean, yeah,
thing,
it's
dude.
absurdity juxtaposition again.
Okay, so yeah.
He lost
Cool.
deep down. But he
Yeah.
couldn't help but
They finally
find
made
his
it work.
heart,
What about this one? We got a special guest for you tonight. Give it up for a real OG, Anomalacabras.
Yeah, because it's great. It's just it's really good, instantaneous, extreme absurdity juxtaposition.
Yeah, and then look at this guy. He's like his dreads are actually like flopping kind of, and he's like, yeah.
Well, it's funny because the artwork itself is also a bit of absurdity juxtaposition because it's simple, but it's rotoscopy in a way. So it's like stylized, but then still has the
Suggestion.
realistic element because it feels rotoscopy on some of the frames.
Yeah. It says here you worked at Rainforest Cafe. What was your role? Next question. See, it's kind of like Gary Larson-esque, but I guess Gary Larson is like a classic and he's a legend. And he did one panel cartoons, which are like even more crazy. But I love these. They're like, I actually really enjoy like not laughing out loud at stuff when you're just like semi-confused half the time and you barely get it and you're just like, yeah, dude, this is awesome.
Yeah, these are instantaneous and fun.
Mm-hmm.
I feel sick.
Nice. 45 people watching. Let's do a little round of promo and then we'll kind of enter the second half, but the second half might not last too long.
The second half can be Alex will look at your meme.
Yeah, have that meme ready, Alex. We're all Jake's sick here. I don't want to see him vomit.
Yeah. But okay, I'm gonna pull up everyone's campaigns and get ready. You guys can chat amongst yourselves. But yeah, that wasn't a bad. That was 2 hours of talking about short stories and long stories.
Yeah, it was fun.
It was great, man.
I got the green light from Passion for Drawing to read the story that I wrote for him on my channel sometime. So I might
get good
Nice.
lighting, get your smoke machine out, Phil. Get some dry ice. Put a turtleneck on, sit by a roasting fire with a glass of wine, the book in hand.
I'm gonna have a virtual fireplace on the screen while I read.
Do it, dude.
So
You need the cup of coffee too, and like the donuts or like something off to the side.
So I'll do that this month for the spooky month.
Spooky, scary.
And I also have, of course, on my channel, if you guys need a spooky Edgar Allan Poe story, I did a reading of The Bells by Edgar Allan Poe.
It's a good one.
Poem, one of my favorites.
Nice. The Bells. That's a good way to start.
Jake's just
Thinking of a short story.
Jake, what's your sign up? It has a regular thing, right? What's it called?
Connellcomic.com.
Yeah.
Or Blue Dick Axe.
Giant Dick Axe.
It's Blue Dick Axe, Phil. Monsterschlong.com.
You should have got that one.
It's probably already taken. But that would be a good way to think of like a starting point for short stories. Think of a cool title, but then how the title would be twisted. Like The Man in the Pea.
What do you think of this title? Race Against Crime.
See? It's exactly what I was just saying.
Dude.
You can just make the title a pun. Okay, cool. Let's think of it.
I impress myself sometimes, guys.
Oh, wait, you thought of that title?
Yeah, look at this.
Wow, you're a genius, Phil. You should be a writer.
A world famous manga writer, Philip Diaz.
Mango! My mango has a 10 volumes.
Yeah, it's pretty fun.
Yeah, I do look like that's the 10 fucking volume manga arc where they fit in one of those shitty cardboard boxes with a plastic handle on it on Amazon for like $100.
Oh no.
Perfect length. Yes. I want to do that. If you know what? I gotta try. I want to dedicate myself to something like that. I don't care. I've been thinking about what's it all about lately. Like, oh, you got to keep living for like more than 10 more years. Jesus Christ. But yeah, like maybe.
Wait, hold up.
What? Come on, you never sit there and think, man, we got to keep this going. How long we got to keep this going for?
This charade.
Yeah, this game called life that we play. But you know, if you could get out 10 volumes of a story before you die, like, it's all right. That's a reason to live.
More.
Chung Lee's Etsy. That's a good link.
Oh yeah.
What's he been up to?
Battle Made Knucklebone. Yeah, Mortal V just dropped that because that's the art that I just showed. He drew.
Are we in the second half yet?
No. You haven't put up the things yet.
Yeah. So here's the Goodnight Paradise Lost. By the way, I pulled this up from my comic. It's so refreshing to not encounter shadow banning. On
Oh yeah, for sure.
It's easy to find stuff for sure.
Yeah. Like otherwise you're like trying to find the link, then you go to their Twitter and trying to find where they posted it and blah blah blah.
Sure.
And it's not their fault. It's freaking Indiegogo. It's like, God damn. Like,
Danky
oh my
Frankie
God.
says back until Jake spoils something else he wants to watch. What did I spoil?
One
Oh, I think he's trolling, but it was like 2 hours ago.
It was One Punch Man, yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, I didn't
Oh.
what saying is boring.
Yeah.
Spoilers.
Yeah,
He dies, Danky. Just kidding. Sorry.
He's
I don't know if that joke's funny.
Hagrid
dies in the end of One
Punch Man.
when
That
One
is
Punch
great.
Man realizes that he's just Caillou from the PBS show Caillou.
Whatever that is.
I know.
Oh, Caillou?
Danky says first quarter. Crystal, good night. And what about talk just a little bit about how long is it? And I guess. Yeah,
So originally we were planning on like 12 issues. We've kind of brought it down to 10. Kind of, pacing wise, it's a lot better that way. And yeah, so 10 issues. If you want to check out issue 1, you can go to mysticalcomics.com to get caught up with the digital PDF over there. And yeah, basically it's black and white sword and sorcery comic. You like stuff like Conan, Heavy Metal Mag. It's the book for you. Anything that's in the past, like a flashback, is in color. The rest of the book is in black and white outside of those flashbacks, and it follows Sir Alexander. He's a knight of King Arthur's court, and he gets turned into a teddy bear and pushed forward in time. And he has a new young master now that he has to protect from the evil Queen Belladonna. And even though there's a cute teddy bear, it's definitely not for kids.
Yeah, this is pervert fringe. Everyone.
Dude, I was just about
Yeah,
to
you
say.
massive perv.
So like this
Demonic
dude,
pornography.
yes, dude. So I posted the double page spread, okay. And like Twitter has where you can kind of like mark something. So you can kind of hide it and then you click show and it shows up.
Yeah.
And so in the post, I was kind of like describing it. I also put a disclaimer like in the text. And then this like random guy is like, this is demonic, like pornography, like this is fringe.
Yeah.
He's like, it's
Yeah.
witchcraft.
Yeah, he said
And, like,
we
so
are
for
gatekeeping now, and I'm revoking your nerd card. That's it.
Wow.
And so for
Yeah,
like
nerds can't be
context,
fringe. What?
Yeah.
and so like for context, guys, it's like basically there's like nymphs and there's like all these other fantasy creatures and there's a big bonfire and they're just kind of dancing and frolicking around in the nude
Rewarding.
as you do. Yeah.
Yeah.
Like dudes are chasing the nymphs and all this stuff.
As they do.
And exactly. And so he just saw that and just kind of spurred on Twitter, and it was so funny. And I mean, he just kind of took something like out of context and spurred as you do on Twitter, and
This is the best of it.
it's how
Yeah.
it goes.
Yeah,
But
you really
it's
should.
great for your book, just put that on the back of the next issue.
I know, it really is a funny quote to call it pervert fringe. You know what else is pervert fringe is Jake's.
That was waiting
Yeah.
until you
Yeah,
switched
dude.
over to it, and I was going to say, speaking of pervert
That's
fringe,
ultimate.
Yeah, this is
Wait
so
till-
pervert
I
fringe.
love it.
wait
though.
till he
I
gets a
love
load
it.
of this.
Because guys, I've seen like this comic. It looks super awesome.
Oh,
And it's
I'm glad you said
hilarious,
something
dude.
positive.
It's so disgusting and hilarious.
Hey, it's not
No one
disgusting.
liked it,
Oh.
dude, but like in a good way though.
Yeah, okay, yeah. It's
love
there's
how
gore in it. If that's
Yeah, yeah.
Jake's like, what's so gross about a giant blue throbby dick? Nothing.
What are you trying? If it's blue and glowy with sparkles on it, it's fun. It's like cartoony and fun, right?
Yeah.
But yeah, no, this is my comedy fantasy that follows the yet another adventure of the titular character Connell the Barbarian as he forces himself into yet another series of mishaps. You can go to connellcomic.com or bluedickaxe.com and give me your email. We want to get to 200 signups. Help us get there. But yeah, I'm really hoping to get finished with coloring Fiendish 2.5 soon, so I can get back to this. I want to start drawing pages.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm
glad
it. I want you
have
to finish your video game and finish this. Do it now. How dare
Okay.
you? Stop.
I'll do it.
Don't stop.
Today I was getting so frustrated that the video game Unity wouldn't open. I was getting so pissed off. I was trying to open it again, but yeah, I got to finish all the projects, because then I'll be like, oh, there is a meaning to life. It's called getting shit finished.
The next.
Yeah. By the way, real quick, Crystal with Good Night. How much longer is this one open?
So we originally had this on Indiegogo. Now the only place that you can get it currently is Fund My Comic or through our website, mysticalcomics.com. It'll be open till the end of November, which is when we'll start shipping issue 2 out to people.
Yeah, cool. So it's coming up. But I was going to say, because you've been on a ton of streams lately and people are really getting to know you and really liking you a lot. And so you should definitely try and organize kind of a big finish party and have a big last
Yeah, for sure.
Because you will get a bunch of backers.
Your solo stream today was good. I'm looking forward to you doing more of those.
It was super awkward, but I'm getting there. I'm building the channel. It
actually wasn't awkward.
It's just kind of like weird talking to yourself sometimes.
I would have hopped in, but I had some shit to do. But I saw you posted the itinerary. I like that too. I was like, oh, I should do that. You actually have like shit to talk about.
Plans.
Yeah.
That's like what Ethan
getting
does.
There.
Like, it's like the best streamers all do that.
Now I just have to get like an intro and outro and like figure that out.
Yeah. I got to do that too. I think whenever I think that, I just think of American Psycho, but he gets used so much. But I'm like, what? Oh, it would be a good one. Speaking of for an intro, it would be the Big Lebowski being like, I hate the Eagles, man.
That's your intro.
That's great. Yeah. I was thinking of something where it would be like The Matrix, Tron, and then I like had something else that would like X-Files. There we go. And it's just like
crystals.
Twilight Zone style intro.
Exactly. Just fully out of context.
Yeah. So and then Zaid Comics, I found the actual site, so I can click to the
if you go to pre-order now, it'll that button right in the center.
Yeah. But the site, check that out too. The site's pretty
like the giant descending.
I was just about to say that. It's a nice layout there.
The big ass. Yeah, that's the trailer.
It's got a great ass.
Go to the site. If you guys want comics now, we ship out books and shirts all the time. So if you guys are looking for stuff to read, go to the Comics website. And then we have 18 pages left for the Lost Pages 3. So excited to get this out for you guys. This is 82 pages of awesome story. It's all about Jasmine and Crimstone, our biker babe with her powerhouse imaginary friend. And we get to learn why she could see her imaginary friend, why she gets powers when he's around. And there's some people out there that want to harvest that power from her. So this is going to be super cool. We're getting into some pages that deal with the imaginary world inside of her head. We get to see a lot of that, a lot of fighting going on in there as well. And Wastoid right there, that awesome design by Tommy Patterson. He is one of the big bads in this story. We get to see the silhouette, Matt Black, and a lot of familiar faces from the previous issues of the Lost Pages, which you could get all in this awesome manga-sized book on the campaign called The Tome. So this is the previous stories in black and white, grayscale, manga size. It includes those 4-page short stories I was just talking about, and the first 2 books of the series. So definitely grab that. Thank you guys for making this an awesome campaign.
Cool. Yeah, and cracking 40K's money. And what about this one? When does it close and what are you launching next? I'm curious also.
So we usually keep these in demand through printing, just so if people missed out and they see others doing reviews or getting them in the mail, then they could grab it from the campaign as well. So we'll close it a little bit after fulfillment time. And then the next thing that we're putting out, a lot of new things is happening with us for next year. So
I have another book that I have a couple books that I'm writing for other people, so they're going to be running those campaigns. But for the cons that are coming up next year, I'm working on a Western intellectual property, which will be a new series that I talked about a little bit in the chat, and that's going to be an ash can that I'm going to bring to some of the cons, and we'll actually have for sale on our site as well. And then I don't know if we're doing Magic Hop next, number 3, or the next Lost Pages. I might put a poll out of what the audience is looking for, because we kind of have momentum for the Lost Pages right now, and rolling into book 4 could be a benefit.
Yeah.
It's
But
like
then
that,
also people miss Magic Hop. Yeah.
right. So I want to, Brandon, I kind of want to gauge where the audience is right now for that, because this story arc is an arc and it wraps up at book 6, where everybody kind of meets each other, comes together, to save the day. And I'm super excited for that. I want to get to that. And I think it would be really cool to get to a point where it's like, oh yeah, we did a series, like this is a full story arc now. I think that would be really satisfying, but we'll see. So, but lots of stuff planned. Like there's a lot of going on over here. I'm super excited about it. Can't tell.
Angela Curry says, I wish there were Halloween emojis like there were gay ones. Boo. Yeah, we don't have specialized.
They don't
I
have
guess
bat.
they get special ones in
There's a
June or
bat.
whatever.
There's no
Yeah.
one or
There's a
skeleton?
bat and a pumpkin, right?
Yeah, and Henry Bemis, I don't know if it was a vote, but he said, I'm okay with Magic Hop. So that's
Hey.
one. Yeah. But yeah, both sound good. I was like, can you do both at the same time?
Dude.
Not really.
I wish. I mean, we can, but I'm a little behind on, because I took some other writing projects as commissions for other people's stuff. So, and like all of that weighs on my shoulders, where it's like, I'm writing this thing, but I got to get to Magic Hop, and I have a plot for Lost Pages 4 already, so that might be quicker to finish. And but it's really awesome to see there's like diehard Magic Hop fans, like Admiral Whack Ass Henry Bemis out there. Sick.
Mm-hmm. Nice. Cool. And then Hotel Story. This is my book live. This one will be available for at least 3 more months. I really want as many people to get a chance to back it as possible. So start saving, putting away your coffee change now, and pick this up while you get a chance.
Yes.
Yeah, and it's kind of it's like 15 days in, right in the middle. So it's that middle doldrums. So I need a pick me up. So if any of you backers, 43 people watching, if anyone hasn't backed it yet, pick this one up. It's a lot like watching a movie. A lot of my books are like that. We were looking at the structure. It's like meant to be read in one sitting, just only buts and therefores, no and thens, just trying to pull you in and keep you until the very end. This is part 1 of a 2-part story, but this part 1 does feel pretty nice and contained. 124 color pages, awesome collaboration with Jared Jewell, who's become a good buddy over the years, a real jack of all trades. I do consider him a little bit of a genius. He did a Hotel Story. He did this logo, which everyone loves, including me. I just think it looks so cool. But so he can just do random stuff really good. And he colored Cerberus. And he co-wrote this story with me, and it's definitely a fun horror adventure story. Like you can see on this page, she chops off the guy's head. It follows this liminal angel who can possess dead bodies. He's trying to stop a witch. And that structure is like almost Cops and Robbers. It's like she's pulling a heist to get souls for a mass sacrifice, and he's trying to stop her. And so actually one of the ways he could stop her is he could do a massacre on all the people, because she needs like 500 souls she kind of promised. That's her deal that she needs to make. So he could like kill like a bunch of people to get below that number, and then she has to either renegotiate or she gets screwed. But he's trying to do it without killing people. So he's like trying to do the good
Yeah.
thing kind of. So he's not even like a super good guy.
It reminds me too of like, especially like that angel aspect is very much like Dead Man from DC, who's a ghost, but the only way he can interact with humans is if he possesses other humans, but he's a good guy ghost, and he was murdered. And
They should do more with that character, by the way.
he's really cool. Like he interacts with Karma, like the female entity. Karma is like the one that brings him back, which is cool. If you ever seen, they did a Justice League Dark animated movie. It's pretty good, and he's in it a lot. Boston Brand is his name.
Nice. Yeah, I read some of that. I would write that in a different universe or whatever. But yeah, all that possession stuff is fun. And yeah, so it's kind of a lot of influence from, like, honestly, like Evil Dead 2 and Dead Alive, some of the horror movies where you can have dead people still talking or whatever. Like, and there's almost some humor to it, but it's not the kind of humor that ruins the stakes of the story. Like, so she can, she like chops his head off and he's still talking shit while she's like putting his head in a basket, Wait a minute.
Yeah, never did, when I was reading it, never did any of the jokes take me out of the flow of everything. I didn't notice that as well. I didn't really notice, you know what I mean? Like, you can notice bad music in a film. Like, good music, you're supposed to not really notice it. I never got taken out, even though it's like full of gags. I never really got taken out of the story at all and felt like, oh, I'm reading a comic now. You know what I mean? Like, I was in it the whole time.
Yeah,
so that's an achievement.
Thanks. Yeah, that's cool feedback. Yeah, Jake's read it and he gives it his approval or whatever, which is nice. Thank you, Jake. But yeah, I give a lot of credit to Jared for that. He brings a really cool vibe to everything he does, and that's part of why I wanted to work with them. And the Obel is like that too. So I do recommend people get both books. That's kind of the bonus book, 48-page black and white horror comic. That one's a little more haunting horror. This is more gore, fun horror. Yeah. And then, so that's it. Take a look, chat. If you're not a bot, prove you're not a bot by backing my book. Bots are okay too. There. Fiendish, also with Rainey. Jake, do you want to give the pitch?
Yeah, she's not here right now, but we should totally pitch the book anyway. This is the first kind of like one shot. We were talking about manga one shots earlier. This is kind of like the first one shot short story in the Fiendish series, which is like a long story. And it's funny because it does do a lot of the stuff where it's like it has a lot of different scenes and it is compacting a longer period of time into this 24-page book. And it pretty much gives you a lot of the backstory for Casimir, the main character of the series. So even though it's not part of the main arc, like, if you want to know why characters are behaving the way they are, especially the main character Casimir, it's like this is a great place to get that information. But yeah, she's broke 22,000, well on the way to 23. I'm coloring up a storm on this, and yeah, I'm hoping she put up a new color page recently, and yeah, like I'm really enjoying. It's one of those projects where where you doing the work makes you want to do more of the work. Do you know what I mean? Like, I was a bit
yeah,
it's good.
This is a fun one that applies a little bit to the presentation this week. This is like that episodic individual story that it serves the larger thing, but this is self-contained.
And there's still a couple of original art pieces up on the campaign. If anyone was hoping to get one of those, I don't think this character's been introduced yet, or maybe they have. And then you've got one of young Casimir in the shadow of Octo. But yeah, go check it out. You can go to fiendishcomic.com and then click on the 2.5 in the corner. It is through Fund My Comics, so you can find it there. But yeah.
Nice.
Cool.
Great.
Yep, and then we'll be back next week. Next week might be Rini, I think.
Yeah,
I don't
it is
know if
supposed
she'll
to
be
be
back or not. For
available,
the trip.
I think, okay, she will be back, and it's going to be the crescendo of the Halloween outfits.
Maybe I'll have to actually do something.
Yeah,
I got something too.
Yes. Okay, it's going to be Battle of the Outfits. Yes. Okay, awesome. That's going to be so cool.
Yeah, where's Alex's meme?
Yeah, Alex, we can't end the show without the meme.
Here
I know, I'm checking for it. He's hustling to get it done. He might not get it done in time.
This is what I was referring to. If no one knows who Caillou is from PBS, it's
full bald-headed kid.
Yeah, there he is.
Yeah.
Try you.
That reminds me of like Doug Quailman or whatever.
Yeah, Doug was great.
Mm-hmm.
Alex commented in chat. Let me post what I
Let
got.
me post what I got.
Yes.
Nice. Caleb earlier said, Jake, did the suit get hot? It didn't get hot. It's just my neck started to freaking hurt because I have to like, lean forward to shove my face out of Jake's mouth. You'll dress up like the Wizard of Oz. That would have been good.
Narwhal, remember when you got banned from YouTube for watching anime live?
Yeah, and I forget even what anime, and it was a while ago now. It might have been 3 years ago or something.
Wasn't it like Wicked City?
Yeah, there was a handful I watched, and I got away with a handful, and then
I remember
one of them.
tuning in, you were watching Wicked City, and I hadn't seen it yet. It was before I got into it.
They're
movie.
really strict.
Yeah, that one's really cool. That's a little pervert fringe for you.
Oh yeah, it's great.
No.
Yeah.
People are wild, man.
Stream. And then you like
What's even
like-
funnier, like on a weird little side note with that guy, that Rebel Squadron, like you need to look at his YouTube.
he's got a YouTube channel.
Yes, dude. So there's like, if you click on his profile, he has a YouTube channel. Watch this video that's from like 6 months ago. Or check out his Baldur's Gate video, and it's so in the one that he did like 6 months ago, it's literally him in the video, and he's like busting open the gates to heaven
Yeah.
and walking through like a boss. And he has like all of these like comic pages that are flying, and he's like batting them away like that. And he has surprisingly he had like a lot of CG ones, so like cyber frogs coming at him and like all this other stuff, and he's like, this is degenerate, it's perverted.
That's awesome.
It sounds like he's a meme or he's
Yeah,
self-aware.
it sounds a meme
Dude,
bit.
but he's so serious though. Like if this and he has like the boys, like pages of the boys comic and like clips of the film, and he's like censored it, and he's like, no, I can't. There's too,
Yeah,
there's
the
too
boys
much
comic is way
degeneracy.
the comic is way better than the TV show of the
I
boys.
know. But he's so serious, and it's funny.
We've got the
Yeah.
meme.
Yeah, me too. I'm doing mine because I want to be the one to control it.
He's like, I want to zoom around it.
What is that?
Look at the
dead
Jake.
dog.
8 of 70 index
I'm a
cards.
mage.
The long and short of it, Napoleon. Then, yeah.
That's-
Oh yeah, his
Author
70
cast-
his 70 scenes fired at the
Oh,
dead
wow.
dog.
the
Steven
dare
Lincoln,
dog,
70 scenes.
and then there's
Oh no.
me, Phil, and Crystal. We're just down here. Are we
That's
are we
great.
fighting the dare dog? Yeah, we're fighting. It's like Final Fantasy VII. We're fighting the dare dog,
Mhm.
and that's Crystal's spell. She cast David Lynch,
That's nice.
writing down the card.
Am I that
Sounds
on
pretty
the night?
accurate.
Can you zoom in on the posse there?
Yeah,
Let's see.
here's our
Maybe
boy.
the comic of us would have to be us as like an RPG group
Dude,
going on an adventure or something.
this is great. Dude, look.
Yeah, yeah,
Like a
against
wolf
the
together.
dare dog.
Oh, that is good.
I'm a little curious how you do it, Alex VRB. Like, is it AI generated the background and then you plop memes on top of it, or?
Mhm.
Yeah, I
Like it-
think he's assembling different AI generated stuff. People complain there's always like wars going on about AI art. If it wasn't for AI art, we wouldn't have these memes.
Well, this is a great example of it being awesome. If it is,
Just
yeah.
use
Yeah.
it for memes.
Yeah.
Yeah, I love
Yeah.
that.
David Lynch smoking with red eyes, just shooting 70.
He's the
Now the
summon.
question
He's
is,
the fucking
are there
summon.
actually 70 cards there? You
Oh
know?
yeah.
That is great.
That's so fun.
Nice, thanks, Alex. Another classic,
This is a
another legendary example of a great meme. That's pretty much the best part about our show, and the only reason our show deserves to exist is because.
You get a meme at the end from Alex.
Yeah,
Yeah, it's like Alex patting us on the back for a job well done. He's like, there you go. You made enough
burned a
jokes
meme.
to make this. Yeah, you earned this.
yeah. Oh, and I kind of missed this, but that's a Shaggy Dog.
Ah,
Oh my
yes. Oh my
Oh.
god.
Nice. See, that's awesome. The memes are deep. They run deep.
The deep lore.
Run silent. Deep.
Thank you once again, Alex. But yeah, we've talked every now and then about like, oh, what if there was a comic with the characters? It could totally be them going on an RPG adventure.
The meme.
Yeah. Yeah, we'd have to find a way to make it not gay, though. However we do that. Maybe
Well,
it's extra.
It would have to.
gay, makes
It
not
could
gay. So
incorporate
gay, it's
all the
not gay.
meme. It could incorporate all the meme stuff.
Yeah, because there's a Amazon animated show that it's like an adaptation of a D&D campaign. Have you guys heard of it? It's called Vox Machina, I think it's called, or no, it's called Vox Populi or
Not heard of
something
it,
like
but
that. But it wasn't
Vox
that good. That's the
Machina,
thing.
I think.
Yeah,
Something
yeah.
like that.
It wasn't that good. It was kind of lame, and I was like, yeah.
well,
What?
you'd
Can't do
have each character having like the particular skills, so like their proficiencies and then their deficiencies, and then you'd have an obstacle that kind of like challenges everyone, and it would be like they kind of argue against each other, but then end up coming together to actually figure out the solution. Or the character that's like told you suck, go away, ends up being the one that comes back and figures out the solution to the enemy or obstacle. I don't know. Very simple
Yeah.
way.
Yeah, remember to hit the like, comment too. Maybe
Subscribe.
that helps the algorithm.
Finger the
Subscribe,
bell.
yeah. I'm at. I don't forget where I'm at. I'm like 2.5K or something subs, so that helps. Thanks everyone. That lets me promote people a little bit, promote myself. Everyone loves it. So sub up. Most people here are subbed, unless you're a bot. Bots are welcome. They're okay. If you're Sonic the Hedgehog bot though, then GTFO.
The stacked letters.
Gotta go fast.
Yeah, gotta type
Uh,
fast before you get banned.
Yeah,
Dude.
yeah. And with that, check this out.